I remember the shortcut near Burnsville, like the road still pulls at me when I think about it too long. The way a thorn stays under the skin long after the bleeding stops. It was early November 2019, one of those gray afternoons when the mountains seemed to lean in closer, the sky low and heavy with the promise of snow that never quite arrives. I'd been in Ashe County, helping a friend haul firewood, stayed longer than planned because the conversation turned to old family stories neither of us wanted to end. We sat on his porch, coffee going cold in our hands, talking about my grandfather who used to cut timber up into high coves, how he always said the ridges remembered things people forgot. By the time I started back toward Asheville, the light was already thinning, the kind of dusk that makes the ridges look sharper, more jagged, like they're waiting for something to happen. The interstate would have added 40 minutes, so I took the back road instead, County 197, a narrow ribbon of cracked asphalt that cuts through the hills and saves time if you know the turns. I'd driven it a dozen times, knew every dip, every blind curve, every place where the trees met overhead like a tunnel. The road started the same as always, gravel shoulders giving way to blacktop, the occasional mailbox half buried in leaves, the faint smell of wood smoke drifting from distant chimneys. I kept the heater on low, windows cracked to let in the cold, crisp air that smelled of wet pine and the river far below. The radio was off. I liked the quiet up here, the way the engine note changed with every rise and fall, the tires humming steady on the pavement. About 5 miles in, just past the old mill foundation where the creek crosses under a rusted bridge, the headlights swept across a green metal marker bolted to a weathered post, Elk River Road, arrow pointing left, the way I'd come from. I slowed, frowned. I'd seen that sign before, but always at the junction where 197 meets 197A, not here. I checked the odometer, still on track. I kept going, figuring it was a misplaced marker, some county crew mistake from years ago, the kind of thing that happens when budgets are tight and no one double checks. The road curved tighter after that, the trees crowding closer, branches scraping the roof like fingernails testing the metal. The pavement narrowed until the center line disappeared under leaves and frost. Then another sign, same one, Elk River Road, same arrow, pointing back the way I'd come. I stopped the truck, engine idling rough, headlights washing over the signpost in a pale white glow. The paint looked fresh, reflective, like it had been put up that day. I got out, boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The air was colder than it should have been, sharp with the smell of wet leaves, and something older, damp earth, coal dust, the faint mineral tang of the river far below. I walked to the sign, solid, bolted tight, no sign of tampering. The post was sunk deep, no wobble. I stood there a long minute, breath fogging in the beam of the headlights, then got back in and drove on. Half a mile later, the sign appeared again. Same words, same arrow, always pointing back. I slowed to a crawl, headlights sweeping the trees, searching for movement, for anything that might explain it. Nothing, just the road, the dark, the quiet. I turned around again, drove back the way I'd come. The sign was gone, nothing but empty post hole and black trees. I drove forward once more, same direction as before. The sign reappeared, same as the others. Every mile or so, another one. Relentless. The road never changed. Same asphalt, same curves, same frost glittering on the shoulders, but the signs kept coming, like someone was moving them ahead of me, always one step beyond where I could catch them. The clock on the dash showed I'd been driving 20 minutes. The odometer said 3 miles. I should have been out by now. The road should have hit pavement, the little bridge over the creek, the county line marker. Instead, it kept narrowing, the guardrail ending abruptly on the right, the drop into the gorge black and bottomless. I felt the first real prickle of sweat under my jacket despite the cold. I talked to myself, low, keep going. You'll hit the junction, you'll see lights. But the signs kept appearing. Every time I passed one, I told myself it was the last. It never was. I started counting them. 5, 6, 7, each one identical, the metal cold and clean, the paint still bright under the headlights. After what felt like an hour,
Though the clock only showed 40 minutes, the road straightened, the trees pulled back, pavement appeared ahead, smooth and familiar, the little bridge over the creek, the county line marker. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, pulled onto the main road, tires humming steady. I checked the clock. 2 hours had passed. 2 hours for a drive that should have taken 25 minutes. My hands shook on the wheel. I drove home with the heater blasting, windows cracked, listening to the engine, to my own breathing, to the quiet that felt too thick, too deliberate. I kept glancing in the rear view, half expecting to see the signs there, arrows pointing back the way I'd come. I didn't go back that way, not for months. When I finally did, in daylight, the signs were gone, all of them. Just empty posts where they should have been, or no posts at all. The road looked exactly as it always had, narrow, cracked, familiar. I drove it slow, searching for any sign of the markers I'd seen. Nothing. The pavement was the same, the curves were the same, but the time never lined up again. 25 minutes. Always 25 minutes. I still take shortcuts sometimes. The mountains are full of them. But I don't take that one anymore. Not alone, not after dark. And when I have to drive through Burnsville, I keep the radio on loud, the windows up, eyes on the road. I don't look for signs. I don't slow down. But I feel it anyway. The pull, quiet and patient, like the road itself remembers the way I drove that night, remembers the signs that pointed me back, remembers the 2 hours it kept. Sometimes, late at night when the house is still and the wind moves soft through the pines, I hear it again. Not the whistle of a train, not footsteps, just the faint crunch of gravel under tires that aren't moving, the low hum of an engine idling somewhere far off, waiting, then silence, then the crunch again, closer, always pointing back, always waiting for me to turn around. I don't turn around. I keep driving forward, but the road knows where I am. It knows the way I came, and it keeps the signs ready, just in case I ever decide to take the shortcut again, just in case I ever decide to follow the arrow that's always pointing behind me. I haven't yet, but the mountains are patient. They always have been, and some roads don't let you leave the way you came. They just wait for you to notice the signs, to turn around, to drive back the way you started. And when you do, they'll be there, every mile, pointing, patient, always pointing back.
I remember the shortcut near Burnsville, like the road still pulls at me when I think about it too long. The way a thorn stays under the skin long after the bleeding stops. It was early November 2019, one of those gray afternoons when the mountains seemed to lean in closer, the sky low and heavy with the promise of snow that never quite arrives. I'd been in Ashe County helping a friend haul firewood from his woodlot up near the Tennessee line. Stayed longer than planned because the conversation turned to old family stories neither of us wanted to end. We sat on his porch steps, coffee going cold in our hands, talking about my grandfather, who used to cut timber up in the high coves back when the mills still ran full shifts. How he always said the ridges remembered things people forgot. He told me about the time my grandfather swore he heard someone walking parallel to him through the laurel on a foggy morning, footsteps matching his own stride exactly, never getting closer, never falling behind, until the fog lifted and the sound stopped like it had never been there at all. We laughed about it then, the way you laugh at stories that feel safe because they're old. By the time I started back toward Asheville, the light was already thinning, the kind of dusk that makes the ridges look sharper, more jagged, like they're waiting for something to happen. The interstate would have added 40 minutes, so I took the back road instead, County 197, a narrow ribbon of cracked asphalt that cuts through the hills and saves time if you know the turns. I'd driven it a dozen times, knew every dip, every blind curve, every place where the trees met overhead like a tunnel. The road started the same as always, gravel shoulders giving way to blacktop, the occasional mailbox half buried in leaves, the faint smell of wood smoke drifting from distant chimneys. I kept the heater on low,
Windows cracked to let in the cold, crisp air that smelled of wet thyme and the river far below. The radio was off. I liked the quiet up here, the way the engine note changed with every rise and fall, the tires humming steady on the pavement. About 5 miles in, just past the old mill foundation where the creek crosses under a rusted bridge, the headlights swept across a green metal marker bolted to a weathered post. Elk River Road, arrow pointing left, the way I'd come from. I slowed, frowned. I'd seen that sign before, but always at the junction where 197 meets 197A, not here. I checked the odometer, still on track. I kept going, figuring it was a misplaced marker, some county crew mistake from years ago, the kind of thing that happens when budgets are tight and no one double checks. The road curved tighter after that, the trees crowding closer, branches scraping the roof like fingernails testing the metal. The pavement narrowed until the center line disappeared under leaves and frost. Then another sign, same one, Elk River Road, same arrow, pointing back the way I'd come. I stopped the truck, engine idling rough, headlights washing over the signpost in a pale white glow. The paint looked fresh, reflective, like it had been put up that day. I got out, boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The air was colder than it should have been, sharp with the smell of wet leaves and something older, damp earth, coal dust, the faint mineral tang of the river far below. I walked to the sign, solid, bolted tight, no sign of tampering. The post was sunk deep, no wobble. I stood there a long minute, breath fogging in the beam of the headlights, then got back in and drove on. Half a mile later, the sign appeared again. Same words, same arrow, always pointing back. I slowed to a crawl, headlights sweeping the trees, searching for movement, for anything that might explain it. Nothing, just the road, the dark, the quiet. I turned around again, drove back the way I've come. The sign was gone, nothing but empty post hole and black trees. I drove forward once more, same direction as before. The sign reappeared, same as the others. Every mile or so, another one, relentless. The road never changed, same asphalt, same curves, same frost glittering on the shoulders. But the signs kept coming, like someone was moving them ahead of me, always one step beyond where I could catch them. The clock on the dash showed I'd been driving 20 minutes. The odometer said 3 miles. I should have been out by now. The road should have hit pavement, the little bridge over the creek, the county line marker. Instead, it kept narrowing, the guardrail ending abruptly on the right, the drop into the gorge black and bottomless. I felt the first real prickle of sweat under my jacket despite the cold. I talked to myself low. Keep going. You'll hit the junction. You'll see lights. But the signs kept appearing. Every time I passed one, I told myself it was the last. It never was. I started counting them. 5, 6, 7, each one identical. The metal cold and clean, the paint still bright under the headlights. The trees seemed taller now, branches lower, the road feeling more like a tunnel with every passing minute. After what felt like an hour, though the clock only showed 40 minutes, the road straightened, the trees pulled back. Pavement appeared ahead, smooth and familiar. The little bridge over the creek, the county line marker. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Pulled onto the main road, tires humming steady. I checked the clock. 2 hours had passed. 2 hours for a drive that should have taken 25 minutes. My hand shook on the wheel. I drove home with the heater blasting, windows cracked, listening to the engine, to my own breathing, to the quiet that felt too thick, too deliberate. I kept glancing in the rear view, half expecting to see the signs there, arrows pointing back the way I'd come. I didn't go back that way, not for months. When I finally did, in daylight, the signs were gone, all of them. Just empty posts where they should have been, or no posts at all. The road looked exactly as it always had, narrow, cracked, familiar. I drove it slow, searching for any sign of the markers I'd seen. Nothing. The pavement was the same, the curves were the same, but the time never lined up again. 25 minutes. Always 25 minutes. I still take shortcuts sometimes. The mountains are full of them, but I don't take that one anymore. Not alone. Not after dark. And when I have to drive through Burnsville, I keep the radio on loud, the windows up, eyes on the road. I don't look for signs. I don't slow down. But I feel it anyway. The pull, quiet and patient. Like the road itself remembers the way I drove that night. Remembers the signs that pointed me back. Remembers the 2 hours it kept. Sometimes late at night when the house is still and the wind moves soft through the pines, I hear it again.
Not the whistle of a train, not footsteps, just the faint crunch of gravel under tires that aren't moving, the low hum of an engine idling somewhere far off, waiting, then silence, then the crunch again, closer, always pointing back, always waiting for me to turn around. I don't turn around. I keep driving forward, but the road knows where I am. It knows the way I came, and it keeps the signs ready, just in case I ever decide to take the shortcut again, just in case I ever decide to follow the arrow that's always pointing behind me. I haven't yet, but the mountains are patient. They all have been, and some roads don't let you leave the way you came. They just wait for you to notice the signs, to turn around, to drive back the way you started. And when you do, they'll be there, every mile, pointing, patient, always pointing back.
I inherited my grandfather's mantle clock the winter after he passed. The same winter the snow came early to the Cataloochee Valley and stayed long enough to bury the old logging roads. The clock had sat on the mantle of his cabin for as long as I could remember. A heavy oak case, beveled glass front, brass pendulum swinging slow and steady behind the door. When the estate was settled, no one else wanted it. My mother said it was too loud. My sister said it looked sad. I took it because it felt like taking a piece of him. I carried it down the mountain in the bed of my truck, wrapped in an old quilt, and set it on the mantel in my own house outside Waynesville. The first few weeks it ran normal. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The same patient rhythm that had counted my grandfather's evenings for 50 years. I wound it every Sunday, listened to the chime at the hour, let it remind me he was still here in some small way. Then came the night it changed. It was late February, one of those still, cold nights when the temperature drops hard after sunset and the house creaks like it's settling into its own bones. I'd been restless. Work at the mill had slowed, the roads were icy, and the quiet in the house felt heavier than usual. I went to bed early, left the lamp burning low on the dresser. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to a sound I couldn't place at first. Not the usual tick-tock, something softer, smoother, almost like a whisper running backward through time. I lay there, eyes open in the dark, listening. The clock was ticking, but the direction was wrong. The pendulum swung the opposite way. The hands were moving backward, smooth, relentless, minute by minute peeling away from the hour. I got up, crossed the cold floorboards in bare feet, stood in front of the mantel. The face of the clock glowed faintly in the lamplight. The second hand swept left instead of right. The minute hand retreated from 12 toward 11. The hour hand eased backward from 2 toward 1. No jump, no stutter, just a slow, deliberate unwinding, like the clock had decided time should run the other way tonight. I watched for 10 minutes, 15. The hands kept retreating. The chime, when it came, was backward too, a descending scale instead of ascending, mournful, like a hymn played in reverse. I didn't touch it. I was afraid to. I went back to bed, left the lamp on, and lay awake until the sky grayed outside the window. When I finally rose, the clock was normal again, hands moving forward, tick-tock, steady, like nothing had happened. I told myself it was a dream, or a trick of exhaustion, or the mechanism slipping in the cold. I wound it tighter than usual that Sunday, listened to the chime ring forward, and tried to forget. But the mountains call you back. I went up to Cataloochee the next weekend to check on the cabin. The road was still half frozen, the valley quiet except for the wind moving through the bare trees. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. The place smelled of old pine and wood smoke, and the faint, sweet rot of things left too long. I built a small fire in the stone hearth, sat in my grandfather's chair, and watched the flames. Around 3 in the morning, I woke on the sofa, blanket tangled around my legs. The house was dark except for the red glow of the coals. And I heard it again. Tick-tock, backward. Not the clock in the cabin. There was no clock there anymore. It was in my head.
The same smooth, reversed rhythm, the same whisper of time unwinding. I sat up, heart thudding. The sound was inside me now, steady, patient, like a second heartbeat running the wrong direction. I pressed my palms to my ears. It didn't stop. I walked outside, stood on the porch in sock feet, the cold biting through. The valley was black, the stars sharp overhead. The ticking followed me, faint but clear, like it had burrowed deep and made a home. I drove back to Waynesville at first light. The clock on my mantle was still running forward. I checked it obsessively after that, every morning, every night. It never slipped again. But every time I went back to the mountains, every time I drove the winding road into Cataloochee, every time I stepped inside the cabin, the ticking started again. Not out loud, not from any clock. Inside my skull, backward, relentless, like time was peeling away layer by layer, taking me back to something I wasn't supposed to see. I stopped going alone. I took friends, took my sister, took anyone who would come. The ticking stayed quiet when they were there. But the moment I was alone again, driving the last stretch of gravel, stepping through the cabin door, standing on the porch watching dusk settle over the valley, it returned, soft, patient, running backward, pulling me with it. Last fall I went up by myself one last time, told myself I needed to close the place up for winter, board the windows, drain the pipes. I arrived just before sunset. The valley was still, the air cold enough to hurt. I built a small fire in the hearth, sat in my grandfather's chair, and waited. Around 3 in the morning, the ticking started again, louder this time, clearer. I stood up, walked to the door, opened it. The night was black, the ridge dark against the stars. The ticking followed me outside, steady, unhurried, like a clock that had been waiting years to be heard. I stood on the porch until dawn, listening to time run backward in my head. When the first gray light touched the ridge, it stopped. Sudden, complete. Silence rushed back in. I locked the cabin, drove down the mountain, and haven't been back since. The clock on my mantle still runs forward. I wind it every Sunday. I listen to the chime ring normal. But I know the other rhythm is still there, waiting for me to return to the valley alone. Waiting for the night I step onto that porch again and let the ticking take me all the way back. Back to the moment my grandfather wound the clock for the last time. Back to the evening he sat in that chair, listening to the same backward rhythm I hear now. Back to whatever he saw when he finally looked at the face of the clock and realized it wasn't running forward anymore. I haven't gone back, but the mountains are patient. They always have been. And every time I wind the clock on my mantle, every time the pendulum swings forward, I feel the pull of the other direction. Soft, steady, waiting. I don't know what my grandfather heard in those last nights. I don't know what he saw when the hands started running backward for him. I just know the ticking is still there, inside me, patient as the valley itself, waiting for the night I finally return alone, waiting for the moment I sit in his chair again, listen to the clock run the wrong way, and understand what he understood. I haven't gone back, but I hear it every night now, even here, even when the clock on my mantle is running forward. The other one is running backward, and it's getting louder. I wonder how long I can keep pretending it's only memory. How long before I drive up that road again, step onto that porch, and let the ticking take me all the way back? How long before I sit down in his chair again, wind the clock, and watch the hands move the way they want to move? How long before I finally see what he saw? I don't know. But the ticking does, and it's patient. It's always been patient.
I remember the first time I saw her on the old iron bridge over the Pigeon River. Like the cold of that night is still caught in my bones. It was late November 2021, one of those still, clear evenings when the temperature drops fast after sunset and the stars come out sharp enough to cut. I had been working second shift at the paper mill in Hartford, pulling doubles because the crew was short and the orders were piling up. By the time I clocked out, the valley was already dark, the river running black and fast below the road. The bridge was the quickest way home. Single-lane, iron truss, built in the 30s when the timber was still thick and the train still ran. Locals called it the Pigeon Bridge. Most people took the newer highway now, but I never did. The old road saved 10 minutes, and after 12 hours on the line, 10 minutes mattered. The headlights swept the bridge as I approached,
There, in the middle, standing on the rail like it was solid ground, was a woman in white. Long dress, pale fabric catching the light, hair loose and dark against the night. She wasn't moving, just standing, balanced perfectly, arms at her sides. I slowed without thinking, tires humming softer on the metal deck. The bridge creaked under the weight of the truck. I stopped halfway across, engine idling, headlights pinning her in place. She turned her head slow, too slow, face hidden in shadow. No features I could make out, just the white dress, the dark hair, the stillness. I cut the engine. The sudden quiet pressed in, broken only by the river rushing below. I opened the door, stepped out. The air was colder on the bridge, wind moving through the truss-right breath. "Hey, you all right?" My voice sounded small against the iron. She didn't answer, didn't move. I took another step. "Ma'am?" She was gone. One moment she was there. The next, the rail was empty. No sound of footsteps, no splash from the river, just the wind and the dark water below. I walked to the spot, leaned over the rail. Nothing. The gorge dropped straight into black. I stood there a long minute, hands on the cold iron, listening. The river kept running. The wind kept moving. I got back in the truck, drove the rest of the way home with the heater on high, windows cracked, telling myself it was fatigue, a trick of light, someone playing a joke. But the bridge felt different after that. Narrower, longer, like it remembered me stopping. The next night, I drove the same way. Same shift, same dark. I told myself I'd look, prove it was nothing. As the headlights swept the bridge, she was there again. Same place, same white dress, standing on the rail, facing downstream this time. I slowed, heart thudding. She didn't turn, just stood. I stopped again, farther back, cut the engine, got out. The cold hit harder tonight, the wind sharper. I walked toward her, slow, boots loud on the metal deck. "Hey, wait." She stayed still. I got closer, 20 feet, 10, still no movement. I reached out a hand like I could touch her shoulder. She was gone. Again, no sound, no blur, just empty rail and empty night. I stood there, hand still outstretched, breath fogging white. The river kept running. The wind kept moving. I backed away, got in the truck, drove home fast. Didn't look in the rear view. Didn't want to see if she was following. I asked around after that, quiet at first. The old man at the gas station near Hartford, the woman who runs the diner. They all knew the story. "That's the pigeon woman," one of them said, voice low. "Been waiting on that bridge since the 40s. Lost her husband in the flood. Stood there every night after, watching the water for his truck. Never came. Folks say she still waits, still watches the road, still hopes he'll drive up one more time. They said it matter of fact, like weather or taxes. No one laughed, no one called it a ghost story, just fact. She waits, she watches, and sometimes, if you're alone on the bridge at night, she lets you see her." I didn't believe it, or I told myself I didn't. But I started taking the longer way home, the interstate, added the time, added the miles, kept the radio on loud. But the old road still called. The bridge still sat there, iron truss black against the night sky. Every time I drove past the turnoff, I felt the pull, quiet, patient, like the bridge itself was waiting for me to come back. One night in February I gave in, same late shift, same dark. I turned off the highway, took the old road. The truck felt heavier, the tires louder on the pavement. I slowed as the bridge came into view. Lights off, no glow, no figure on the rail. Relief washed through me, sharp and cold. I kept driving. Halfway across, the headlights caught her. Same white dress, same place, standing on the rail, facing me this time. Head down, hair hiding her face. I stopped, engine idling, hands tight on the wheel. She didn't move, didn't look up, just stood there, balanced perfectly, like the rail was wide as a sidewalk. I cut the engine. The silence rushed in. I opened the door, stepped out. The wind was colder on the bridge, sharper. I walked toward her, slow. "I'm here," I said. "I'm looking." She lifted her head. Her face was pale, eyes dark hollows, mouth open in a soundless cry. Not angry, not sad, just waiting. Waiting for someone who never came. I stopped, 10 feet away. The wind moved her dress,
the fabric whispering against the iron. I reached out a hand. She was gone. The rail was empty. The bridge was empty. Just the river below, black and fast. I stood there until my legs shook, until the cold seeped through my coat. Then I walked back to the truck, got in, drove home. I didn't look in the rear view, didn't want to see if she was following. I still drive that way sometimes, have to. The interstate adds too much time. Every time I approach the bridge, I slow down. Every time I cross it, I glance at the rail. It's empty, always empty. But I feel her there, watching, waiting, patient as the river itself. I don't know who she lost. Don't know why she stands on the rail every night. Don't know why she lets me see her. I just know she's still there, still waiting, still hoping the headlights will catch her husband driving up one more time. And sometimes, when the night is long and the road is dark and I'm alone on that bridge, I feel the pull, quiet, insistent, asking me to stop, to get out, to stand on the rail beside her, to wait with her. I haven't stopped yet. I keep driving, but the bridge remembers. It remembers every car that crosses, every pair of headlights that sweeps the rail, and it waits. It always waits, for someone who never comes, for someone who might. And I wonder how long I can keep driving past before I finally stop, before I step onto that rail, before I stand beside her, before I finally understand what she's waiting for. I haven't stopped yet, but the bridge is patient, and the night is long, and every time I cross I feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting, hoping. I keep driving, but I slow down, every time, just a little, and I listen, for the sound of another set of headlights coming up behind me, for the sound of a truck that never arrives, for the sound of someone finally answering the wait. I haven't heard it yet, but I keep listening, and the bridge keeps waiting, and so does she.
I remember the week I spent in that rented cabin near Brevard, like the sound of those footsteps is still pacing somewhere above me, waiting for me to look up. It was early November 2021, one of those stretches of weather where the days are mild enough to walk without a coat, but the nights drop hard and sudden, frost rhyming the grass by morning. I'd needed to get away. Work had been relentless. The apartment in Greenville felt too small, too full of echoes from arguments that never quite ended. The listing called it Secluded Mountain Retreat, photos showing a small log cabin with a wide porch, surrounded by oak and hemlock, no neighbors for miles. Perfect, I thought. Quiet, just me and the woods. The drive up was easy, the road climbing slow through the Pisgah National Forest, leaves already turning deep red and gold. I arrived just before dusk, unloaded groceries in a duffel, unlocked the door with the key left under the flower pot. The cabin smelled of cedar and old smoke, the kind of scent that settles into your clothes and stays. A stone fireplace dominated the main room, a narrow loft bedroom above with a slanted ceiling and a single window looking out over the trees. No television, no Wi-Fi, just a small radio on the shelf and a stack of paperbacks someone had left behind. I built a fire, ate soup from a can, sat on the porch as the light bled out of the sky. The quiet was deeper than I expected, almost solid, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an owl. I went to bed early, quilt heavy, the fire dying to coals below. The first footsteps came around 2 a.m. Heavy, deliberate, pacing slow across the tin roof directly above me. Thump, pause, thump, pause. Not the scamper of a raccoon or the light patter of squirrels. These were boots, solid weight shifting from heel to toe, crossing from one side of the cabin to the other, then back again. I lay still, eyes open in the dark, heart thudding against my ribs. No trees hung over the roof, no branches to sway and scrape, no overhangs for animals to climb, just open sky and the sloped tin. I told myself it was the house settling, the metal contracting in the cold,
but the rhythm was too even, too human. I listened for 20 minutes, maybe more. The pacing never hurried, never stopped, just back and forth, patient, like someone up there had all night to decide what to do next. When the sound finally faded, I didn't sleep again. I stayed awake until gray light seeped through the window, then got up, made coffee, tried to shake the unease. The roof was clean, no leaves, no debris. I walked around the cabin, looked up at the tin. Nothing. No claw marks, no footprints, just smooth metal catching the morning sun. I told myself I'd imagined it. Exhaustion, isolation playing tricks. I spent the day hiking the nearby trails, letting the woods fill my head with other sounds. Wind, birds, the creek running cold and fast. By evening I felt steadier, built another fire, read one of the paperbacks, went to bed telling myself the first night was a fluke. The second night the footsteps returned. Same time, same slow pace. Thump, pause, thump. This time they crossed directly over the loft, right above my bed. I could track the movement, starting at the peak, walking to the eave, turning, walking back, heavy enough that the tin creaked faintly under the weight. I sat up, quilt pulled to my chest, staring at the ceiling boards. No branches, no animals that size. I whispered into the dark, "Go away." The pacing didn't falter. It continued, steady, unhurried, like whoever was up there hadn't heard me or didn't care. I stayed awake until dawn again. The footsteps stopped just before first light, as if they knew the sun was coming and didn't want to be seen. The third night I was ready. I left the lamp burning low, sat up in bed with my back against the headboard, listening. The footsteps started at 2:30, same slow rhythm. This time they stopped directly above me. No more pacing, just stillness. Then scratching, slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging across the tin. Not frantic, not searching, patient, testing the metal inch by inch, as if trying to find a weak spot. The sound went on for minutes. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for a nail to punch through, for something to break through. Nothing did. The scratching stopped. The footsteps resumed, paced once more across the roof, then faded. Silence returned. I packed at first light, threw clothes into the duffel, left the key on the table, drove down the mountain without looking back. I called the owner from the road, told him I had to leave early, family emergency. He sounded surprised but didn't ask questions. "Everything all right with the place?" he said. I hesitated. Then I asked about the roof. I heard noises, like someone walking up there. Long pause. "The roof was replaced last year," he said finally. "New tin, new supports, no trees overhead, nothing should have been up there." He didn't offer an explanation. I didn't ask for one. I just thanked him and hung up. I haven't gone back to that cabin. I don't rent places with tin roofs anymore, but the memory stays. Every time I hear metal creak in the wind, every time I lie awake in a quiet house and the night settles heavy, I hear those footsteps again, slow, deliberate, pacing across the roof above me, stopping right over the bed, scratching, waiting. I still wake sometimes, heart pounding, listening for the first thump. It doesn't come, not anymore, but the waiting does. The feeling that something is still up there, patient, unhurried, walking the roof of whatever house I'm in now. Not angry, not loud, just there. Waiting for me to look up, waiting for me to speak, waiting for the night I finally answer. I haven't answered yet. I keep my eyes on the ceiling. I keep the lamp on low. I listen. And I wonder how long I can keep pretending the footsteps are only memory. How long before I hear them again, slow, deliberate, pacing across the roof above my bed. How long before they stop directly overhead? How long before the scratching starts? How long before I finally say, out loud, into the dark, "I'm here"? And something answers, not with words, with weight, with the slow, patient creak of tin bending under footsteps that have been waiting all along. I don't know, but I feel it coming closer. Every quiet night, every still moment, the footsteps are patient, the roof is waiting, and I'm still listening.
I found the letter in the mailbox on a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day when the sky hangs low and gray and the air tastes like wet leaves and coming rain. The envelope was yellowed at the edges, the stamp from a series discontinued years ago. Postmarked October 17th, 2012, the exact day my mother died. I stood there on the gravel drive, truck still running behind me, feeling the cold seep through my jacket as I turned the envelope over in my hands. The handwriting was hers, looped, careful, the same way she used to write my name on birthday cards when I was small. Inside, one sheet of lined paper folded once. 3 words in black ink. Don't go back to the home place. That was all. No greeting, no signature. Just the warning, centered on the page like a command carved into stone. I hadn't planned to go back. The home place, my grandparents' old cabin in the head of Little Catalucci, had been empty since she passed. The family had let it sit, taxes paid out of a small trust, doors locked, windows shuttered. No one wanted it. Too far back. Too many memories. Too much silence. I'd driven past the turnoff a few times over the years, felt the pull, and kept driving. The letters should have settled it, should have been the final reason to stay away. But the next week, I felt the tug stronger than ever. It started as a restlessness I couldn't name. I'd wake in the middle of the night, the cabin in my head, dark timbers, stone chimney, the porch where my grandfather used to sit and whittle. I'd smell wood smoke that wasn't there. I'd hear the creek running over rocks below the ridge. By Friday, the pull was physical, a tightness in my chest, a weight in my gut. I told myself I was going to check on the place, make sure the roof hadn't caved, the pipes hadn't burst. I told myself I owed it to my mother to see if the letter was some kind of joke, some cruel prank from a relative I didn't know. I packed a small bag, a flashlight, a thermos of coffee, and drove up the mountain before I could talk myself out of it. The road in was worse than I remembered. Gravel washed out in places, potholes deep enough to scrape the undercarriage. The trees had grown thicker, branches meeting overhead like a tunnel. By the time I reached the clearing, the sun was low, slanting gold through the bare limbs. The cabin looked exactly as she left it. Porch sagging slightly, tin roof patched in spots, windows shuttered with plywood. The yard overgrown with broom sedge and blackberry. I sat in the truck for a long minute, engine idling, staring at the place. The quiet was deeper here, almost solid, broken only by the faint rush of the creek far below. I cut the engine, stepped out. The cold hit hard. I walked to the porch, boots crunching frost. The door was still locked. The key was where she'd always kept it, under the loose board, third from the left. I opened the door. The smell rolled out. Old pine, wood smoke, the faint sweet of dried apples left too long in the cellar. Everything was as I remembered. The stone fireplace cold, the table bare, the ladder to the loft still leaning against the wall. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me.
I remember the first time I heard the bell like it was yesterday, though it was the spring of 2018 now, the kind of early April morning when the dogwoods are just opening and the air still carries the bite of winter at dawn. I'd been staying in the old family place up near Green Mountain for a week, the little cabin my grandfather built in the 40s, tucked so far back in the holler that the road turns to dirt after the third bridge, and then to nothing but ruts after the fourth.
I'd come up to clear out what was left after my father passed. Papers, tools, the things nobody else wanted to touch. The house was quiet in the way only empty mountain houses can be. The silence so deep it feels like the walls are listening. The church sat a half-mile down the hollow, a small white frame building with a steeple that had leaned a little more each year since the congregation dwindled to nothing in the late 60s. Folks called it Green Mountain Chapel. The bell had been silent for decades, rope rotted, clapper rusted in place. Kids used to dare each other to climb the bell tower and ring it, but after one boy fell and broke his arm in '72, the door was padlocked and the key lost. Nobody bothered it after that. It just sat there, weathering, a quiet reminder of when the holler still had voices raised in song on Sunday mornings. That first morning I woke just before dawn to the sound of it ringing. Slow, clear, one deep toll, then another, then a third, measured, deliberate, like someone pulling the rope with care. The tone carried down the hollow, low and mournful, the way a funeral bell sounds when the wind is right. I lay there in the dark, quilt pulled to my chin, heart thudding once hard. The cabin was cold. The fire had died to embers hours earlier. The bell rang 5 times, then stopped. Silence rushed back in, thicker than before. I told myself it was a dream, or the wind playing tricks through the steeple, or maybe some kids had finally pried the lock and were messing around. I got up, pulled on boots, lit the lantern, and walked down the dirt road in the gray light. The church looked the same as always, white paint peeling, windows boarded, steeple leaning. The padlock was still on the door, rusted shut. I shone the lantern up into the bell tower. The rope hung limp, frayed ends dangling, untouched. The bell itself was still, dark bronze against the pale sky. No one had rung it. No one could have. I went home, built the fire back up, made coffee. The day passed ordinary, chopping wood, sorting boxes, listening to the creek run high from snowmelt. By evening, I had almost convinced myself the bell had been imagination, the way grief fills empty spaces with sounds that aren't there. The second morning it rang again. Same time, same slow tolls, 5, measured, heavy with something that felt like sorrow. I sat up in bed, breath shallow. This time I dressed fast, grabbed the lantern and my grandfather's old shotgun, unloaded but heavy enough to feel solid in my hands, and walked down the road before the sky lightened. The church was the same, door locked, bell still, rope untouched. I stood there until the first birds started calling, until the sun touched the ridge and turned the valley gold. The bell didn't ring again that day, but the sound stayed in my head, echoing soft, like it had burrowed deep and made a home. The third morning it rang longer. I woke to it already tolling, slow, steady, one after another, like someone counting down to something inevitable. I didn't bother with the lantern. I dressed in the dark, stepped outside, walked the road with only the moonlight to guide me. The tolls kept coming, clear and deep, carrying across the hollow like they were meant for me alone. When I reached the church, the bell was still ringing. I stood in the yard listening. The rope was still. The bell swung on its own, slow arcs, the clapper striking true each time. I walked closer. The sound filled my chest, vibrated in my ribs. I reached the door. The padlock hung open. Rusted hasp split clean, like someone had finally given in and broken it. I pushed the door. It opened without resistance. Inside was dark, dust thick on the pews, the pulpit empty, the hanging lamps cold. I stepped in. The bell tolled again, once, twice, then stopped. Silence rushed back, heavy, pressing. I stood there in the aisle, shotgun loose in my hands, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, just the faint smell of old wood and candle wax, and something else, something human, faint, like someone had been here recently and left only their scent behind. I backed out slow, closed the door. The padlock was still broken. I walked home in the gray light, the tolls echoing in my head, even though the bell had gone silent. I left the next day, packed quick, locked the cabin, drove down the mountain without stopping. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. What would I say? That an abandoned church bell rang for 3 mornings straight. That it tolled like a funeral when no one pulled the rope. That the door opened when it shouldn't have. I kept it inside. Let it settle like sediment in a jar. Dark and still. The cabin is still there.
I pay a neighbor to check the pipes, make sure the roof doesn't cave. I haven't been back since. But every spring when the dogwoods bloom and the air turns sharp again, I wake just before dawn. I lie there, listening, waiting for the first slow toll to carry down the hollow, clear and deep, counting something I can't name. It hasn't come yet, but I hear it in my head sometimes. Soft, measured, 5 tolls, then silence, then 5 more. Like something is still waiting in that empty church. Rope untouched, bell swinging on its own, tolling for someone who hasn't arrived. I don't know who it's ringing for. Don't know why it stopped after 3 days. Don't know why the door opened when I stepped close. I just know the sound is still there, patient, waiting for the morning I finally drive back up that road, walk into the hollow, and step inside the church again, waiting for the morning I stand in the aisle and listen to the bell toll one last time. I haven't gone back, but the bell is patient. The mountains are patient. And every quiet dawn, when the light is gray and the valley is still, I listen. I wait for the toll that hasn't come yet.
I first noticed the truck in the spring of 2022, though looking back, I think it had been there longer. Maybe since the week I moved into the small house off the old logging road above the Pigeon River. The pull-off was just a wide spot of gravel on the shoulder, maybe 50 yards from my driveway, the kind of place hunters use in deer season or kids park to drink on weekends. Most nights it sat empty, but starting around mid-April, when I pulled in after my shift at the mill, always between 5:40 and 5:50 p.m., there it was, a late 90s Ford F-150, faded green, no tags visible from the road, parked nose out like it was waiting to leave. The windows were tinted dark enough that I couldn't see inside, but the truck was always in the same spot, same angle, engine off. I never saw anyone get in or out. At first I thought nothing of it. People park in pull-offs all the time, trucker taking a nap, someone on the phone, a couple wanting privacy. I waved once, casual, as I walked up my drive with my lunchbox. No response. The truck just sat there, dark and still. The next evening it was back. Same time, same place. I started paying attention after that. Every workday, Monday through Friday, the green Ford appeared like clockwork. I'd crest the rise, headlights sweeping the pull-off, and there it would be, waiting. Never on weekends, never early, never late. Just those 30 minutes or so after I got home. One Friday in May, I decided to look closer. I'd had a long shift, the mill air still thick in my clothes, and the quiet of the drive had left me edgy. I pulled into my driveway, killed the engine, and sat there a minute watching the truck across the road. No movement, no light inside. I got out, walked down the drive slow, crossed the narrow blacktop. The gravel crunched under my boots. The truck was cold, hood cool to the touch, no heat rising from the grill. I leaned in, cupped my hands to the driver's window. Empty. No one in the seat, no coffee cup, no phone, just the faint smell of old vinyl and motor oil drifting out through the cracked vent window. I stepped back, looked around. The road was empty in both directions. The woods on either side were dark, the trees holding the last of the daylight like they were reluctant to let it go. The next evening it was there again. I got home at 5:47. The truck was already parked, engine off, but when I walked past on my way to the mailbox, I felt heat coming off the hood. Warm, not hot, like it had been running until just before I turned onto the road. I stopped, hand on the hood. The metal was still radiating. I looked inside again, empty, but the driver's seat was pushed back farther than the night before, like someone taller had been sitting there. I backed away slow, crossed the road, went inside, locked the door behind me. After that, I started changing things. I took a different road home one night, longer, but it shaved off the pull-off. The truck wasn't there when I got in. Relief hit me hard, sharp. The next night I left work early, tried to beat my usual time. The truck was already waiting, same spot, same angle, engine warm again. I began to vary my schedule. I'd stay late at the mill, clock out at 6:37. Sometimes I'd stop for groceries and down, drag it out. Sometimes I'd drive the long way around. The truck adjusted. If I came home at 6, it was there by 5:50. If I came home at 7:30, it was there by 7:20. Always early enough to be waiting, always gone by morning. I stopped waving. I stopped looking directly at it. I started parking in the barn instead of the drive, walking the long way around through the trees so I wouldn't cross in front of it. But I could still feel it, watching from across the road, patient, unhurried. I started keeping the curtains closed after dark. I left the porch light on.
I kept a baseball bat by the back door. None of it helped. The truck was never there when I looked out the window. It was always just out of sight, just far enough that I couldn't catch the driver getting in or out. One night in July, I couldn't take it anymore. I left work on time, drove straight home, pulled into the barn, shut off the lights, and sat there in the dark. I waited. 10 minutes, 20, 30. Then I heard it, the low rumble of an engine starting across the road. I cracked the barn door, peered through the gap. The green Ford was pulling out slow, headlights off, taillights dark. It turned onto the road, drove past my driveway without slowing, disappeared down the hollow. I waited another 5 minutes, then walked across. The pull-off was empty. The gravel was warm where the truck had been. Tire tracks fresh, no footprints, no sign of anyone getting out. I changed my hours after that, switched to first shift, left at 3:30 p.m., got home by 4:15. The truck stopped coming. The pull-off sat empty every afternoon. Weeks passed, months. I started to breathe easier. I started sitting on the porch again in the evenings, watching the light fade over the ridge. I told myself it was over, that whoever it was had lost interest, that I'd imagined the menace, built it up in my head because I was alone too much. Then came the night I worked late. I'd stayed to help finish a job, overtime, nothing unusual. I didn't get home until almost 8. The sky was dark, the road black except for my headlights. I turned into the drive, killed the engine, sat there a minute. The pull-off was empty. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I got out, walked to the porch. The green Ford was parked in my yard, nose pointed toward the house, engine off, lights off, driver's door open. I froze on the steps. The dome light was on inside the cab, dim, yellow, spilling across the empty seat. No one there. But the seat was pushed all the way back. The steering wheel had the same worn grip marks mine did. The air freshener hanging from the mirror was the same pine scent I used. I stepped closer. The truck was warm, radiator ticking, like it had just arrived. I backed away slow, went inside, locked the door, turned on every light, sat in the living room with the shotgun across my lap, waited. Nothing happened. No footsteps on the porch, no knock, no engine starting. Around 2 in the morning, I looked out the window. The truck was gone. No tire tracks in the grass, no oil spot, nothing. Just the empty yard, the dark trees, the quiet. I don't park in the barn anymore. I don't sit on the porch after dark. I keep the driveway light on. I check the pull-off every evening when I get home. It's always empty now, but I know he's still out there, somewhere, waiting for me to slip back into my old routine, waiting for the night I leave work at the usual time, drive the usual road, pull into the usual driveway. I change my hours permanently. I take the long way home. I keep the radio on. But sometimes when the house is quiet and the night is still, I hear it. The low rumble of an engine idling just out of sight, just far enough that I can't see the headlights. Patient, unhurried, waiting for me to come outside. I don't go out. I keep the lights on. I keep the doors locked, but I feel him watching. From the pull-off. From the dark. From the place where the truck always waited. He knew my schedule once. He still knows it. And he's patient. The mountains are patient. They always have been. And some things don't stop watching just because you change the time you come home. They just wait for you to slip. To forget. To step outside one evening when you think it's safe. I haven't slipped yet. But I know he's still there. Engine warm. Seat pushed back. Waiting. And I wonder how long I can keep changing my hours before he finds the new one. How long before I come home and see the green Ford in my yard again, door open, dome light on, seat warm. I don't know. But I feel him out there. Every evening. Every time I turn onto the road. Every time I check the pull-off and it's empty. It's never really empty. He's just waiting. Patient. Unblinking. Always a little early. Always ready. And one day when I'm tired, when I forget to check, when I think it's over, he'll be there. Engine idling. Waiting for me to come home. I haven't seen him since, but I know he's still watching. Still waiting. And the pull-off is still there. Empty. Always empty. Until it isn't.
I remember the fog that night on the parkway near Craggy Pinnacle. The way you remember a dream you can't quite shake off, even years later. The kind that leaves you waking up with your heart already racing before you know why. It was late November 2020, one of those sudden mountain storms that roll in after a clear day, the temperature dropping fast enough to make the windshield crackle with frost the moment you turn off the engine. I'd been up in Boone visiting my sister, stayed longer than I meant to because the conversation kept drifting back to our father, the way it always does when neither of us wants to be the first to say goodnight. By the time I started south on the parkway, the sky had already turned the color of wet slate, and the first tendrils of mist were curling across the road like fingers feeling their way down the ridge. The fog thickened fast. 1 minute I could still see the outlines of the balds. The next I was driving through milk, high beams useless, just a white wall thrown back at me. I slowed to a crawl, windows cracked to hear the road better, listening for the rumble of the centerline reflectors under the tires. I knew the parkway well enough, knew Craggy Pinnacle was coming up, the big pull-off with the overlook where people stopped to watch the sunrise. I figured I'd bull in there, wait it out, maybe nap until the visibility returned. I found the turnoff more by field and sight, gravel crunching under the wheels, and parked as close to the edge as I dared without risking the drop. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was absolute. No wind, no crickets, no distant trucks on the lower road. Just the soft ticking of the cooling motor and my own breathing fogging the windshield. I sat there a minute, letting my eyes adjust. The fog pressed against the glass, thick and slow, like it was curious about what was inside. I wiped a circle with my sleeve, looked out. Faces were looking back. Not reflections, not tricks of condensation. Real faces, pale, indistinct at first, but sharpening as I stared. My father's face, older than when he died, eyes tired the way they were at the end. My sister's face beside him, younger, the way she looked before the accident, mouth open like she was about to speak. Then my old friend Travis, the one who went missing up here Hot Springs 6 years ago, beard longer than I remembered, eyes wide and searching. More came, cousins I hadn't seen since childhood, my high school sweetheart who moved away without saying goodbye, even my grandfather, face lined deeper, watching me the way he used to when I was small and afraid of the dark. They were all there, pressed against the glass, silent, unblinking, staring in at me like I was the one on display. I didn't scream, I couldn't, my throat closed tight. I just sat frozen, hands on the wheel, feeling their eyes on me like weight. The fog kept shifting, faces forming and dissolving, but always the same ones. People I'd loved, people I'd lost, people I'd failed in one small way or another. None of them spoke, they just watched, patient, like they'd been waiting a long time for me to stop here, alone, in the dark. I reached for the ignition, my hand shook so bad I missed the key the first time. The engine got, the headlights flared, gutting through the fog, and for a second the faces sharpened, eyes wide, mouths open in silent pleas. Then the lights scattered them, the fog rolled back, empty again. I threw the truck into reverse, backed out fast, gravel spitting, tires slipping on the wet shoulder. I drove blind, high beams useless, wipers slapping, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't stop until I hit the lower road, pavement solid under me, streetlights glowing weak in the distance. I pulled into a gas station lot, killed the engine, sat there shaking. The fog had lifted, the night was clear again, stars sharp overhead. I looked in the rear view.
I remember the night my great-grandmother's rocking chair started moving on its own, like the sound of those slow creaks is still somewhere in the walls of this house, waiting for me to listen again. It was the winter of 2017, late January, when the cold settles into the bones of old wood, and the nights stretch longer than they have any right to. My parents had both passed the year before. First Dad from the heart that finally gave out after too many cigarettes and too much worry.
Then Mom 6 months later, quiet in her sleep, like she didn't want to be left behind. The house was mine then, the same one my great-grandmother had lived in since the 30s, built by her husband with logs he cut himself from the ridge behind the property. I moved back in because the apartment in town felt too small for all the grief, and because the quiet here was familiar, even if it wasn't always kind. The rocking chair sat in the corner of the living room, where it had always sat, facing the fireplace. Dark oak, worn smooth by decades of hands and backs, the seat cushion faded to a soft gray. Great-grandma used to rock in it every evening after supper, Bible in her lap, humming hymns in that low, cracked voice that carried through the whole house. When she died in '92, no one moved the chair. It just stayed there, empty, a piece of the room no one dared to claim. I kept it after my parents passed. It felt wrong to take it away, like moving it would erase the last trace of her. The first night it happened, I woke around 2 in the morning to the sound of creaking, slow, rhythmic, the way wood does when weight shifts back and forth. I lay there, eyes open in the dark, listening. The house was cold. The fire had died to embers hours earlier, and the wind was still outside. No draft, no loose board, just the steady creak, 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 coming from the living room. I told myself it was the temperature dropping, the old timbers contracting, the way they do in winter. But the rhythm was too even, too deliberate. I got up, pulled on socks, walked barefoot down the hall. The chair was rocking. Slow, steady, back and forth, the rockers kissing the floorboards with soft thumps. No one in it, the cushion flat, the Bible still on the side table where I'd left it. The firelight had died completely. The room was lit only by the faint silver of moonlight coming through the curtains. I stood in the doorway, breath shallow, watching the chair move like someone invisible was sitting there, rocking themselves to sleep. I stepped closer. The creaking didn't falter. I reached out, touched the armrest. The wood was cool under my fingers. The moment I made contact, the rocking stopped. Sudden, complete. The chair settled into stillness, like it had never moved at all. I stood there until my feet went numb, waiting for it to start again. It didn't. I went back to bed, left the lamp burning low in the hall. I told myself it was the house settling, the way old things do when the cold gets into them. I almost believed it. The next night it happened again. Same time, same slow rhythm. I woke to the creak, 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 drifting down the hall like a lullaby no one had asked for. I didn't get up right away. I lay there, listening, feeling the sound settle into my chest. When I finally walked to the living room, the chair was rocking just as before, slow, steady, empty. I watched it for a long time, standing in the doorway, arms crossed against the cold. The moonlight made the oak look almost silver, the cushion almost white. I stepped closer again. This time I didn't touch it. I just stood there, waiting. The chair kept rocking, back and forth, like it had all night to decide when to stop. Around 4 in the morning, the creaking slowed, then stopped. The chair settled. Silence returned. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the kitchen with coffee I didn't drink, staring at the doorway to the living room. When dawn came, gray and thin through the windows, I made a decision. I carried the chair outside, not far, just to the shed behind the house, a small outbuilding my grandfather built for tools and firewood. I set it in the corner against the wall, closed the door, and padlocked it. The shed was cold, dark, the kind of place you don't linger. I went back inside, locked the house, and tried to forget. The rocking never stopped. Not in the living room, not in the shed, but in my head. Every night after that, around the same hour, I would wake to the creak, creak, creak. Soft, steady, coming from somewhere inside the walls, somewhere deep in the bones of the house. I would lay there, eyes open, listening. The sound wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was patient. Like someone was sitting in that chair, rocking slow, waiting for me to come back out to the living room and sit with them. Waiting for me to remember who used to rock there every evening after supper, Bible in her lap, humming hymns in that low, cracked voice. I started sleeping with the radio on low,
I started leaving lights burning in every room. I started sleeping on the couch instead of the bedroom, closer to the front door, closer to escape. Nothing helped. The creaking followed me. Soft, steady, always at the same hour, always patient. I moved the chair back inside once, thought maybe putting it where it belonged would quiet the sound. I set it in the corner again, facing the fireplace. That night the rocking started earlier, around midnight, and it didn't stop until dawn. I sat on the floor in front of it, watching the empty seat move, listening to the rockers kiss the boards. When the first light came through the window, the chair stopped. I moved it back to the shed the same day. The creaking followed anyway. I sold the house last year. The new owners, a young couple from Charlotte, thought it was charming, old, full of character. I didn't tell them about the rocking. I didn't tell them about the way the sound follows you, patient and unhurried, like it knows you'll come back eventually. I didn't tell them about the nights I still wake up hearing it, even here in the new place, even with different walls and different floors. I still hear it. Soft, steady, creak, creak. Not every night, not anymore, but when the wind is low and the house is quiet and the temperature drops just right, the sound finds me again. I lay there, eyes on the ceiling, listening, waiting for it to stop. It always does, eventually. But I know it's still out there, in the shed I left behind, or maybe in the walls of the new house, or maybe just in me. Rocking slow, patient, waiting for me to come back in that chair again, waiting for me to remember who used to rock there every evening, who used to hum those old hymns until the fire dies low. I haven't gone back. I haven't sat in that chair since, but the creaking follows me. Soft, patient, always waiting for the night I finally sit down and rock with it. I haven't yet, but the sound is patient. The house is patient. And some things don't stop moving just because you move them to the shed. Some things keep rocking. Even when no one is sitting there. Even when no one is left to hear them.
I remember the afternoon I wandered off the Appalachian Trail near Roan Mountain, like the laurel still has thorns embedded under my skin, the kind that work deeper the more you try to ignore them. It was mid-October 2020, one of those rare, clear days when the high country turns gold and crimson, the kind of weather that makes you forget how fast the light can fail. I'd been hiking the AT for years, day trips, section hikes, never a through hike, but Roan Mountain had always been my favorite stretch. The balds are wide open, the views endless, the trail wide enough that you can walk without thinking too hard about where your feet are going. I parked at the Carver's Gap lot early, shouldered my day pack, and started north toward the summit. The air was cool, sharp with the smell of balsam and dry grass. I felt good, strong, ready for the climb. About 2 miles in, just past the false summit where the trail dips into a small saddle before the final push, I saw the side path. It branched left off the white blazes, narrow but well-trodden, pine needles packed down, no blowdowns blocking the way. A faint trail marker, one of those small white diamonds nailed to a tree, pointed the direction. I checked my map. Nothing official, but it looked inviting, like it might cut a loop back toward the car and save me some time on the descent. I'd been hiking for hours already, legs warm, mind loose. I figured why not? A little adventure. What could go wrong? The path sloped gently downward, the trees thickening fast, hardwoods giving way to spruce and hemlock, the canopy closing overhead. The ground stayed soft, the trail clean. I walked easy, listening to my own breathing, the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. The air cooled as I dropped in elevation, the smell shifting to damp earth and moss. After maybe 20 minutes, the path leveled out, running along the spine of a narrow ridge. I kept expecting it to rejoin the AT, or at least intersect another trail. It didn't. It just kept going, straight and patient, through the spruce. An hour in, it ended. No warning, no widening, no cairn. Just laurel thicket swallowing the path whole, dense, green-black, branches woven tight enough to block out the sky. I stopped, checked my watch. 3:17 p.m.
The sun was still high, but the light down here was dimmer, filtered through layers of needle and leaf. I turned around. The trail back looked the same, soft pine needles, the faint depression of my own footprints. I started walking. The markers were gone. Every tree I remembered passing had no white diamond, no blaze. The path itself seemed narrower, the spruce closer, the air heavier. I kept walking. The ridge felt longer than it had on the way in. The trees stayed the same height, same spacing, but something was off. The light kept fading faster than it should have. I checked my watch again. 4:03. I'd been walking back for almost 50 minutes. The trailhead should have been close. It wasn't. I picked up the pace. The path kept going, twisting slightly now, the laurel pressing in on both sides. I called out once, voice flat against the trees. "Hello?" The echo came back thin, swallowed quick. Panic started as a small knot in my stomach. I told myself I was just turned around, that the trail would loop or widen any minute. It didn't. The ridge kept dropping. The trees kept thickening. The air grew colder, the light grayer. I stopped again, checked the compass on my phone. North was behind me. I turned, walked the other way. The path stayed the same, narrow, soft, endless. I walked faster. The knot in my stomach tightened into something sharper. My breathing grew loud in my ears. Hours passed. The sun was gone now, the sky a deep indigo through the canopy. My headlamp beam cut sharp tunnels through the dark. I kept walking, kept expecting the trail to open up, to hit the AT, to hit anything familiar. Nothing. The laurel stayed thick. The spruce stayed close. The path stayed narrow. I stopped counting time. I just moved, forward, backward, sideways when the trail bent. My legs burned. My throat was dry. I drank the last of my water. The pack felt heavier with every step. Then, just when the dark had become complete and the cold had settled deep into my bones, the trees thinned, the path widened, the white blazes reappeared, sudden, bright, familiar. I stumbled out onto the main AT, the wide, well-trodden trail I'd left hours earlier. I stood there, chest heaving, headlamp sweeping the path in both directions. The summit was to my right, the trailhead to my left. I checked my watch. 7:42 p.m. 4 hours had passed since I left the main trail. 4 hours for what should have been a 20-minute detour. My legs shook. I started walking, fast, almost running, toward the parking lot. The trail felt shorter now, the bleezes clear, the path wide and sure. I reached the truck just as the first stars appeared overhead. I threw the pack in the bed, climbed inside, locked the doors, and sat there until my breathing slowed. The lot was empty. The night was still. I drove home without stopping, windows up, heat on full, listening to the engine and my own pulse. I haven't wandered off trail since. I stick to the marked paths now. I check my watch obsessively. I tell myself the time loss was exhaustion, dehydration, a bad case of getting turned around. I tell myself the path was just an old game trail that faded into laurel. I tell myself a lot of things, but I still feel it sometimes. When I'm hiking alone, when the trail dips into thick spruce, when the light starts to fail, I feel the pull, soft, quiet, like the woods are offering me another path, one that looks maintained, one that promises to save time. I feel the temptation to step off the blazes, to follow the faint depression in the needles, to see where it goes. I never do, but I know the trail is still there, somewhere in the spruce near Roan Mountain, narrow, patient, waiting for me to wander off the den, waiting for the moment I take one wrong step, follow one wrong turn, and lose the markers, waiting for the hours to stretch, the light to fail, the time to slip away. I haven't gone back alone. I keep to the main paths. I keep my watch close. But every time I hike in the high country, every time the spruce thickens and the trail narrows, I feel it. The pull, the invitation, the promise of a shortcut that leads nowhere. And I wonder how long I can keep walking the marked trail before I finally step off, before I follow the path that looks so easy, so maintained, before I walk until the places disappear and the hours stretch thin. I haven't yet, but the woods are patient. They always have been, and some trails don't end where they're supposed to. They just wait for you to notice they've been leading you the wrong way all along. I haven't noticed yet, but I feel the pull every time I hike, every time the light starts to fail, every time the spruce close in, waiting, always waiting, for the day I finally take the side trail and keep walking and never find my way back.
I remember the night I babysat my niece in that old house near Asheville, like the whisper is still there, faint and patient, just behind my left ear whenever the house gets too quiet. It was the summer of 2022, late July, one of those sticky evenings when the heat lingers even after the sun drops behind the ridge and the air turns thick with the smell of cut grass and river mud. My sister had a rare date night, first one since the baby was born, and I offered to stay over so she wouldn't have to rush back. The house belonged to our grandmother once, a 2-story frame place on a narrow road that winds up into the mountains above the French Broad. She'd lived there alone for 20 years after Granddad died, and when she passed in 2018, my sister bought it cheap. The place still smelled like her, old pine, camphor, the faint sweet of dried lavender she used to keep in every drawer. I liked staying there. It felt like coming home, even if the quiet sometimes pressed a little too close. My niece was 6 months old then, small enough that she still slept in the bassinet beside the guest room bed. I fed her around 8, rocked her until her eyelids fluttered shut, then carried her upstairs to the nursery. Same room I used to sleep in as a kid, same narrow window looking out over the backyard, where the lawn gave way to backwoods. I set up the baby monitor on the dresser, the kind with the little video screen, plugged it in, tested the range. The picture was clear, her tiny chest rising and falling, the soft glow of the nightlight painting her cheek pink. I kissed her forehead, turned off the overhead light, and went downstairs to read. The house settled around me, the old timbers creaking as they cooled, the wind brushing the eaves, the faint murmur of the river far below. I told myself I'd check on her every hour. I didn't need to. The monitor sat on the coffee table, volume low, a small green light blinking steady. Around 2 a.m, the whispering started. Soft at first, almost lost in the static hum of the monitor's speaker. I thought it was interference, some neighbor's cordless phone bleeding over, or the wind moving through the attic vents. I reached over, turned the volume up a notch. The static cleared. Then I heard it clear. My name. Soft. Slow. A woman's voice, low and calm, the way someone speaks when they're trying not to wake a sleeping child. Sarah, Sarah. Over and over, gentle, patient, like she was calling me from the next room. My heart kicked hard once, then settled into something faster. I stared at the monitor screen. The picture was the same. The bassinet, the blanket tucked around my knees, her chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. No one else in the frame. No shadow. Just the nightlight glow and the empty room. I stood up. The floorboard creaked under my foot. The whispering continued, unhurried. Sarah, Sarah. I walked to the stairs, listening. The voice stayed in the monitor, not carrying through the house. I climbed the stairs slow, heart loud in my ears. The nursery door was open, the way I'd left it.
stepped inside. The baby was asleep, face turned to the side, tiny fist curled near her mouth. The room was empty. No one standing by the bassinet. No one in the rocking chair in the corner. I checked the closet. Empty. Under the crib. Nothing. The window was latched. Curtains still. I picked up the monitor from the dresser. The screen showed the same empty room, the same sleeping baby. The green light blinked. The whispering kept coming through the speaker. Soft. Relentless. Sarah. Sarah. I stood there in the dark nursery, holding the dead monitor, listening to the silence. My knees stirred once, sighed, settled again. I carried the monitor downstairs, set it on the coffee table, plugged it back in. The screen came to life. Same picture, same empty room. No whispering. I sat on the couch, light on low, and waited. Nothing. I told myself it was interference, a neighbor's monitor, a crossed signal. I told myself a lot of things. I didn't sleep. I kept the monitor volume low, kept watching the screen. Around 4, the baby fussed once. Settled. No voice. Dawn came slow. Gray light seeping through the curtains. I went upstairs. Checked on my niece. She was fine. Sleeping deep. I unplugged the monitor, carried it to the kitchen, set it on the counter. The house was quiet. The normal quiet. I made coffee, sat at the table, stared at the device like it might speak again. It didn't. My sister came home around 9. I told her I'd heard something strange on the monitor. Static, maybe a crossed signal. She laughed, said the house was old, full of weird echoes. She didn't ask more. I didn't tell her the rest. I left that morning, drove back to my apartment in Greenville, kept the monitor in the trunk for a week before I threw it away. I told myself it was over. But sometimes, late at night when the apartment is still, and the street outside is quiet, I hear it again. Soft. Low. A woman's voice, saying my name over and over. Gentle. Patient. Like she's calling me from the next room. I check the hallway. I check the closets. I check under the bed, the old place alone. Of every time I drive past the turnoff. Every time I see the rage rising dark against the sky. I feel the pull. Quiet. Insistent.
I remember the ridge above my house, the way you remember a face you once trusted, familiar at first, then slowly, quietly, not quite the same anymore. It was the summer of 2023, the first full season I'd lived in the little cabin I bought on the north slope of Big Laurel Mountain, far enough above the French Broad that the river was just a murmur most nights. The place had been abandoned for years before I found it. Roof patched with mismatched tin, porch sagging, windows still holding the original wavy glass. I liked that it was old. I liked that it had been lived in, breathed in, by people long gone. I thought the quiet would be good for me after the noise of the city, after the divorce, after the way my own footsteps had started sounding too loud in empty rooms. Every evening after supper, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the sun drop behind the ridge. The line of the mountain was sharp against the sky, pine and spruce dark against the fading light, a steady, unbroken shape that had looked the same every night since I moved in. I'd sit until the light was gone, until the first stars pricked through, until the chill made me go inside. It was routine, comforting. The reg never changed. That was the point. Then one evening in mid-July, it did. I was out there as usual, coffee gone cold, rocking slow in the old chair that had come with the house. The sun was low, the shadows long, the air thick with the smell of pine resin and the faint, sweet rot of the forest floor. I glanced up at the ridge the way I always did, tracing the familiar silhouette against the orange sky. Something was off. The line looked taller, not dramatically, just a fraction higher, like someone had added a layer of trees overnight, or like the mountain had straightened its back while I wasn't looking. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, chalked it up to the angle of the light, the haze of late summer. But when I looked again, the peak seemed closer too, not miles away anymore. Closer, like the ridge had taken a single, slow step toward the house. I went inside, closed the door, locked it, told myself I was tired. The next evening I went back out. Same chair, same coffee, same routine. The ridge was closer still. The trees along the crest looked taller, denser, the dark line of the mountain pressing down the slope, narrowing the distance between it and my porch. I sat there longer than usual, watching. The sun sank, the light bled out, the ridge stayed where it was, closer, taller, wrong. I didn't sleep well. I kept waking to the sound of nothing, the kind of nothing that feels like waiting. The third night, I couldn't pretend anymore. I sat on the porch earlier, before sunset, coffee untouched, staring at the mountain. It felt like it was right behind the house now. The trees that had been miles away looked close enough to touch. The slope had flattened, the ridge dropping lower, the dark wall of forest leaning over the clearing like a hand about to close. I could hear the wind moving through the pines up there, low, steady, almost breathing. I stood up, walked to the edge of the porch. The air was colder than it should have been, sharper. I looked up. The ridge line was there, above me, behind me, too close. I turned around slow. The house looked small against it. The porch felt smaller. The chair felt smaller. Everything felt like it was shrinking under the weight of that mountain that had moved without moving. I went inside, locked the door, pulled the curtains, sat in the dark living room with the shotgun across my lap, not because I thought it would help, but because holding something solid made the shaking stop. I waited. The house creaked. The wind moved through the eaves. The ridge stayed outside, silent, patient, closer than it had any right to be. I left the next morning, packed light, clothes, books, the few things I cared about. I didn't look back when I locked the door. I drove down the mountain road, windows up, radio off, heart still thudding too hard. I didn't stop until I reached the valley, until the ridge was just a line on the horizon again, distant and ordinary. I sold the cabin 6 months later, didn't go back to see it.
The realtor handled everything. The new owners, a couple from Raleigh, thought it was charming. They liked the view. They liked the quiet. I didn't tell them about the ridge. Didn't tell them how it moved when you weren't looking. Didn't tell them how it waited until you were alone. How it pressed closer every night until you could feel the weight of it against the back of the house, until you could hear the pines breathing right behind the walls. I live in town now. Small apartment. No porch. No view of any ridge. I keep the curtains open at night. I keep the lights on. I tell myself the mountains are far away. I tell myself the ridge is back where it belongs. But sometimes, when the wind comes down from the north and the air turns sharp, I feel it again. The pull, the slow, patient shift. I wake in the dark, heart thudding, and for a moment I'm back on that porch, coffee cold, watching the ridgeline move closer. I get up. I walk to the window. I look out. The street is empty. The buildings are still. The ridge is miles away. But I feel it. Closer. Taller. Waiting. I don't go back up there. I don't drive the road past the turnoff. I don't look at the mountains from the highway. But every time the wind comes down from the north, every time the air turns cold and sharp, I feel the ridge behind me again. Not angry. Not loud. Just there. Patient. Moving closer when I'm not looking. I don't know how long it will wait. I don't know how long I can keep the curtains open before I finally look out and see it standing right behind the building. Trees leaning over the roof, dark and silent, watching the window where I stand. I haven't looked yet, but I feel it out there. Every cold night, every still moment. Waiting. Always waiting. And I wonder how long I can keep pretending the ridge is where it belongs. How long before I turn around one evening and see it has moved again. Closer. Taller. Right behind me. I haven't turned yet, but the mountains are patient. They always have been. And some things don't stay distant just because you move away. They just wait. They wait until you're alone again. Until the light is low. Until you finally look up. And when you do, they're there. Closer than before. Watching. Waiting. Always waiting.
I remember the first time I saw the lantern light on the old logging road. Like the cold from that night is still caught in the cab of my truck, waiting for me to turn the key and feel it again. It was the fall of 2022, late in October, when the days are still warm enough to keep your window cracked, but the nights drop fast and hard, the kind of dark that presses against the glass like it wants in. I'd been working late at the mill outside Hot Springs, pulling a double because the crew was short and the orders were backed up. By the time I started the drive home, the sun was long gone, the sky that deep bruised purple that makes the ridges look taller, closer, like they're leaning down to watch you pass beneath them. The road was empty. It always is after 9. Just me, the low rumble of the engine, the headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the black. The old logging road branches off the highway about 6 miles from my place, a gravel stretch that cuts through the hollow and saves me 20 minutes if the deer aren't crossing. I turned onto it without thinking, tires crunching over loose stone, the truck swaying gentle on the ruts. The trees closed in quick, branches meeting overhead like a tunnel, the air inside the cab turning colder, sharper, smelling of damp pine and the faint, sweet rut of fallen leaves. About a mile in, I saw it. A soft yellow glow bobbing along the side of the road, moving parallel to the truck, keeping perfect pace. Not headlights, not a flashlight beam. Smaller, warmer,
The kind of light you get from an old kerosene lantern with the wick turned low. It floated just beyond the reach of my high beams, drifting slow through the trees, never falling behind, never pulling ahead. I slowed the truck, thinking maybe another hunter, someone walking the road with a light. I rolled the window down, leaned out. "Hey, you need a ride?" My voice sounded small against the dark. No answer. The light kept moving, same steady pace, same distance, like whoever carried it hadn't heard me, or didn't care. I sped up. The lantern kept up. I slowed again. It slowed too. For 5 miles it followed, never closer, never farther, just there, bobbing gentle through the underbrush, a pale yellow eye in the black. I felt the first real prickle at the base of my neck, the way your body knows something is wrong before your mind names it. I kept my eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel, telling myself it was a neighbor, a poacher, someone taking the same shortcut. But no one walks that road at night, not alone, not with a lantern. When I finally turned onto the gravel drive that leads to my house, the lantern followed. It drifted along the edge of the yard, slow, unhurried, until I pulled up to the mailbox. Then it stopped, hung there, hovering just beyond the beam of my headlights, glowing soft against the dark trees. I sat in the truck, engine idling, watching it. No sound, no footsteps, just the light, steady, like someone was standing there holding it, waiting for me to get out. I didn't. I cut the engine, grabbed my lunchbox, walked to the porch without looking back. The light stayed where it was for a long moment, then drifted slow into the trees, fading until the dark swallowed it whole. I locked the door behind me, turned on every light in the house, and sat on the couch with the shotgun across my lap until dawn. The night was quiet. No footsteps on the gravel, no creak of the porch boards, just the memory of that light, hovering at the edge of the yard, patient, waiting. The next night it was back. I left work at the same time, took the same road, told myself I'd try faster this time, outrun it. The lantern appeared at the same spot, maybe a mile in, bobbing along the side of the road, keeping pace, closer tonight. Not much, just enough that I could see the faint corona of light around the glass, the soft flicker of flame inside. I didn't slow down, I didn't call out. I just drove, eyes on the road, heart loud in my ears. The lantern stayed with me the whole way. 6 miles of gravel, 6 miles of dark. When I turned into my drive, it followed again. This time it stopped closer, right at the mailbox, glowing bright enough that I could see the shape of the lantern itself. Old, dented tin, handle worn smooth, wick turned low. No hand holding it, no arm, just the light, floating there, steady, like it had been carried all the way, and now waited politely for me to invite it inside. I didn't get out right away. I sat in the truck, headlights on, watching it. The flame flickered once, twice, then held steady again. After a long minute, it drifted slow into the trees, same as before, fading until the dark took ink. I went inside fast, locked the door, turned on every light. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee going cold, listening for footsteps on the gravel, for the soft clink of a lantern handle against metal. Nothing came. I started leaving work earlier. I started taking the highway, adding the extra miles. The lantern stopped appearing on the road. The pull-off stayed empty. I told myself it was over, that whatever it was, someone playing a joke, my own mind filling the dark with shapes, had lost interest. I started sitting on the porch again in the evenings, coffee in hand, watching the light bleed out of the sky. The quiet felt safer now. The ridge looked distant again. Then came the night I worked late. I didn't get home until almost 10. The road was black, the trees pressing close. I turned onto the gravel drive, headlights sweeping the yard. The lantern was there. Not at the mailbox this time. Closer, standing in the middle of the yard, between the truck and the porch, glowing soft and steady. The flame burned bright enough that I could see the details. Old tin, dented on one side, handle curved, glass chimney streaked with soot. No hand, No arm, just the light, floating at chest height, waiting. I stopped the truck, sat there, engine idling, staring. The light didn't move. It just hung there, patient, like it had all night to wait. I got the engine. The silence rushed in. I opened the door slow, stepped out. The cold hit hard. The lantern stayed where it was, glowing, flickering gentle. I walked toward it, slow, careful. The light held steady. When I got close, 10 feet, maybe less, the flame flared once, bright, then dimmed again. I reached out a hand. The lantern drifted backwards, slow, unhurried, keeping the same distance. I followed. It led me across the yard, past the porch, toward the trees. I stopped at the edge of the clearing. The light stopped too, hung there, glowing soft against the dun wall of woods. I stood still, breath fogging white, watching it. It waited, patient, like it had been waiting all along for me to follow. I turned back, walked to the porch, climbed the steps, unlocked the door, went inside, locked it behind me, turned on every light, sat on the couch with the shotgun across my lap. The lantern stayed outside. I could see its glow through the window, soft, steady, flickering against the glass. It didn't move, it just waited. I didn't sleep. I sat there until dawn, watching the light through the curtains. When the first gray light touched the ridge, the lantern winked out, gone, like it had never been there. I went to the window. The yard was empty. No lantern, no glow, just frost on the grass, the dark trees, the quiet.
I remember the day I pulled up to that old cabin like it was yesterday, even though it's been years now. The truck's tires crunched over the gravel road that snaked through the hollers of West Virginia, the kind of place where the mountains swallow the sky and the trees crowd in like they're listening to every word you say. I'd come out here after everything fell apart back in the city. Lost my job at the mill, then the house, then Sarah walked out without so much as a backward glance. Figured a fresh start in my grandpop's old hunting shack would do me good. It was isolated, sure, tucked away on a forgotten ridge with nothing but dense woods pressing up against it on 3 sides. The nearest neighbor was a good 5 miles down the valley, and town was another 20 beyond that. But isolation was what I wanted, or so I thought. The cabin itself was sturdy enough, built from logs that had weathered more storms than I could count. 1 bedroom, a small living area with a wood stove, and a kitchen that doubled as the dining space. The kitchen window was the biggest in the place, a single pane of glass looking straight out into the forest. No curtains when I got there, just the bare frame staring into the dark green void. I didn't think much of it at first. Unpacked my boxes, stacked firewood, got the generator humming. Days were simple: chopping wood, fixing leaks, maybe hiking a bit to clear my head. The air was crisp, smelled like pine and earth, and for a while it felt like healing. But nights were different. The sun dips early in those mountains, and when it does, the shadows stretch long and hungry. I'd sit at the table with a cup of coffee, listening to the wind rattle the leaves outside. That's when it started, the feeling. Like eyes on me. Not just any eyes, but something patient, waiting. I'd glance up at the window,
see my reflection in the glass against the black night, and swear there was movement out there in the trees. A branch snapping, maybe, or the faint rustle of leaves that wasn't quite the wind. I'd tell myself it was deer or coon scavenging. Appalachia has its share of wildlife, after all. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Grandpop used to spin yarns about the woods, how they held on to things, old grudges and forgotten folks. "There's people out there," he'd say, his voice low over the fire. "Feral ones, gone wild after the mines closed or the floods came. They watch, boy. They always watch." I shook it off as superstition at first, but as the weeks wore on, that feeling gnawed at me. I'd be washing dishes, suds up to my elbows, and my skin would prickle, like someone was standing just beyond the tree line, staring in. I'd freeze, sponge in hand, and peer out. Nothing but darkness. My own face looking back, pale, tired, with bags under the eyes from too many sleepless nights. I'd wave my hand sometimes, just to see the reflection move with me, prove it was just glass and light. But the unease lingered, like a bad dream you can't quite shake come morning. One evening, after a long day hauling water from the creek, I decided to ignore it. Made myself a stew from canned beans and some venison I'd shot the week before. The pot simmered on the stove, filling the cabin with that hearty smell that almost made the place feel homey. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the branches like secrets being traded. I ate at the table, facing the window without meaning to. The glass was a mirror in the dim light of the bulb overhead, showing me hunched over my bowl. But as I chewed, that prickle started again, stronger this time. I looked up, straight into my reflection's eyes. It was me, all right. Same scruffy beard, same flannel shirt. But something was off. I tilted my head, testing it. The reflection tilted too. I blinked. It blinked. Relieved, I went back to my stew. Then out of the corner of my eye, I caught it, or thought I did. A stillness. I snapped my gaze back up. There I was, staring. But when I raised my spoon to my mouth, the reflection didn't. It just watched. Eyes locked on mine, unblinking, while its hand stayed put on the table. My heart stuttered in my chest. I froze, spoon halfway to my lips, waiting for it to catch up. It didn't. Just sat there, mirroring my face but not my movements, like it was deciding something. I don't know how long I sat like that, breath caught in my throat. The stew went cold in the bowl. Outside, the wind died down, leaving only silence. Then a sound, a low crunch, like footsteps on dry leaves, right up close to the cabin. Not animal, too deliberate. I bolted up, chair scraping back, and the reflection finally moved, with me, like nothing had happened. I rushed to the window, cupped my hands against the glass to block the indoor light. Darkness stared back, impenetrable. But I swear, just for a second, I saw a shape shift among the trees. Tall, hunched, gone before I could focus. That night, I didn't sleep, paced the cabin, shotgun in hand, listening. The woods were full of noises if you paid attention. Owls hooting, branches creaking, the occasional distant howl that could be coyote or something else. Grandpop's stories came flooding back. Tales of families that vanished into the hills during the Depression never came out the same. "They forget how to be people," he'd whisper. "Live off the land, watch the cabins for scraps, but sometimes they want more than food." I told myself it was nonsense, but the feeling, that stayed. Next morning, I drove into town for supplies, picked up some heavy curtains from the dollar store, black ones that'd block out everything. The clerk, an old-timer with a face like cracked leather, eyed my purchase. "Trouble with the windows?" he asked, casual-like. I shrugged, but he leaned in. "Folks up on the ridge say the woods got eyes. My uncle swore he saw one once, pale thing, mimicking him through the glass. Covered it up, but he trailed off, backing the curtains. Feeling never leaves, does it?" I didn't answer, just paid and left. drove back with the radio blaring to drown out my thoughts. Hanging those curtains felt like a victory at first. Tacked them up tight over the kitchen window, no light sneaking through. That night, I cooked without looking over my shoulder, ate in peace, or what passed for it. But as the hours ticked by, the prickle returned, subtler, but there, like the watching had moved inside somehow. I'd catch myself glancing at the covered window, imagining what might be on the other side, pressing close, listening. A few days later, things got worse. I was out chopping wood when I found the tracks, boot prints, or what looked like them, barefoot maybe, with toes splayed wide like they'd forgotten shoes years ago. They circled the cabin, stopping right under the kitchen window, deep impressions in the mud, like whoever made them had stood there a long time, watching. I followed them into the woods, shotgun slung over my shoulder. The trail wound through the underbrush, faint but steady. Deeper in, I found signs, a snare trap made from vines, half-eaten rabbit carcass nearby. Not animal work, too precise, human, but wild, feral. My pulse quickened. I pushed on, the forest closing in, trees so thick the light barely filtered through, turning everything to shades of green and shadow. Then I heard it, a whisper, not wind, words maybe, garbled and low. I froze, straining. It came again, from behind a cluster of rocks. Sounded like my name. Tom. Soft, mimicking my voice but off-key, like an echo through water. I raised the gun, called out, "Who's there?" Silence, then laughter, quiet, rasping. Not mine, but close enough to chill my blood. I backed away, heart hammering, and ran for the cabin, locked the door, barred it with a chair. That night, with the curtains drawn, I sat in the kitchen, listening. The feeling was everywhere now, not just the window. The walls seemed to press in, the air thick with unseen eyes. I tried to sleep, but dreams came. Me at the window, staring out, and my reflection stepping through the glass, reaching for me with hands that weren't quite right, fingers too long, skin too pale. Woke in a sweat, dawn breaking. Decided I couldn't stay like that. Tore down the curtains, thinking maybe facing it head-on would help. The window was clear, the woods innocent in the morning light. But as evening fell, I avoided looking. Cooked with my back turned, ate fast. Still the prickle built. Finally I couldn't stand it. Turned slow, looked out. There I was, reflection steady. I waved, it waved. Smiled, it smiled. But the eyes, they didn't match. Mine were scared, its were hungry. That's when the scratching started. Faint at first, like nails on wood, right outside the window. I grabbed a flashlight, shone it out, caught a glimpse. Pale face, pressed to the glass. Not mine. Gaunt, wild hair, eyes wide and unblinking. It mimicked my shock, mouth opening in a silent scream. Then gone, melting into the dark. I covered the window again, thicker this time, nailed a blanket over it. But the scratching came back, night after night. Sometimes whispers through the cracks. My name, bits of conversations I'd had alone in the cabin, like it was learning me, piece by piece. Weeks blurred. I stopped going into town, holed up with canned food and the shotgun. The feeling never left. It seeped into everything, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of wind. I'd see shapes in the corners of my eyes, hear footsteps.
I was up near Newfound Gap that summer, staying in a little ranger cabin the Park Service lets volunteers use when they're helping with trail maintenance. It's not much more than a one-room shack with a tin roof and a porch that hangs out over the drop-off, but it suited me fine. I'd taken the gig after my divorce, needed to get away from people, from the noise of Knoxville, from the way folks looked at me like I was something broken. The Smokies don't judge you. They just swallow you whole if you let them. And I figured that was better than pity. The cabin sat on a ridge where the wind funnels through the gap like it's got somewhere important to be. Daytimes were peaceful enough. I'd hike the Appalachian Trail sections, clear blowdowns, pick up trash left by tourists who think the wilderness is their personal dumpster. Evenings, I'd cook something simple on the propane stove, sit on the porch with a thermos of coffee,
and watched the sun bleed out over the layers of blue ridges stretching clear into North Carolina. The air up there is thin and sweet, smells like balsam and whetstone. Most nights the only sound was the wind moving through the spruce and the occasional barred owl asking its eternal question. It started on a Tuesday, I think. I'd come back from a long day on the trail, boots caked with mud, shirts soaked through. The sun was dipping behind Clingman's dome, painting everything gold and purple. I was leaning on the porch rail, letting the breeze cool me down, when I heard it, faint at first, almost lost under the rush of wind. A voice, singing. An old hymn, the kind my granny used to hum while she shelled peas on the back porch. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Slow, mournful, carried on the air like it was coming from the gap itself. I straightened up, listened harder. It was a woman's voice, I thought, though it was hard to tell at that distance. Clear, but sad in a way that settled heavy in my chest. I looked down the trail both ways. Nobody. The nearest through hikers I'd seen that day were miles off, and the day trippers would have been long gone by then. I figured maybe somebody was camped lower down the slope, out of sight, singing to themselves. Happens sometimes. Folks get lonely out there, start talking or singing just to hear a human sound. I didn't think much more about it. Went inside, ate my supper, and turned in early. Next evening, same thing. I was out on the porch again, watching the mist rise out of the valleys, when the wind shifted and brought it to me. Same hymn, same verse.
I'd been holed up in that little cabin outside of Boone for most of the winter, ever since the plant in Beckley shut down for good, and I couldn't face another month of staring at the same cracked walls in my trailer. The cabin belonged to my Uncle Ray before he passed, tucked way back on a dirt road that the county plow forgets about the minute the first flake falls. It's just a squat log box with a tin roof, a stone chimney, and a porch that wraps halfway around. No electricity most days, just a propane tank, a wood stove, and whatever daylight leaks through the frosted windows. I liked it that way. Quiet enough that a man could hear himself think, or stop thinking altogether, depending on what he needed. That December had been brutal, even by mountain standards. Snow started Thanksgiving week and never really let up. I'd drive the old Ford down to the valley once every 10 days or so for supplies, but mostly I stayed put, splitting wood, reading dog-eared paperbacks by lantern light, and listening to the wind worry the eaves. Nights got long and cold, the kind of cold that finds every gap in the chinking and settles in your bones. I slept hard, woke late, and didn't mind the solitude.
truth be told, it felt like the first peace I'd had in years. The night it happened, the snow came down thick and steady, the big wet flakes that muffle everything. I'd banked the stove good before turning in, pulled the quilts up to my chin, and listened to it hiss against the roof until I drifted off. Woke up around dawn to that particular stillness that only fresh snow brings, like the whole world's holding its breath. I lay there a minute, feeling the chill creeping across the floorboards, then got up, pulled on my boots and coat, and stepped out onto the porch to take a look. Everything was buried: the woodshed, the truck, the split wood stacked along the wall, all under a clean white blanket at least a foot deep. No tire tracks on the road, no sign anybody had been up the holler since the last storm 3 days before. The air was sharp enough to cut your lungs, and the sky was still low and gray, promising more. I stood there, breathing it in, feeling small against the mountains, and that's when I saw them. Bare footprints. Clear as day in the new snow, coming out of the tree line maybe 30 yards from the cabin. Human prints, long and narrow, toes splayed a little wider than normal, like whoever made them hadn't worn shoes in a long while. They circled the house, slow, deliberate, around the woodshed, past the truck, up the 3 steps to the porch railing. I followed them with my eyes, heart starting to pick up for no reason I could name. The prints went all the way around the porch, pausing here and there like somebody was peering in the windows. Then they came straight to the front door, stopped right on the welcome mat I never used, and nothing. Just ended. No prints leading away, no disturbance in the snow beyond that spot, like whoever it was had vanished into thin air. I stood there a long time staring, breath fogging in front of me. Told myself it was nothing. Maybe I'd walked out in my sleep, though I've never done that in my life, and I was still wearing the same wool socks I'd gone to bed in. Checked the bottom of my boots anyway. Dry, no snow packed in the treads. The prints outside were deep, pressed by real weight, and the edges were crisp, not melted like they'd been there long. I looked at the size, about like mine, maybe a touch narrower, same length heel to toe. I wear a 10.5. I went back inside, latched the door, and checked every window lock twice. The cabin only has 4 windows and the 1 door, so it didn't take long. Everything was secure, same as always. I made coffee on the stove, strong and black, and sat at the little table watching the snow fall again. Kept telling myself it was kids from down the ridge playing a prank, but there weren't any kids up here, and nobody could have walked in that deep snow without leaving a trail from the road. Besides, the road was drifted shut. I'd have seen any vehicle tracks yesterday. All day I kept finding excuses to look outside. Every hour or so I'd pull the curtain back just enough to scan the porch and yard. The prints stayed perfect, untouched. The new snow filled in the tree line some, softened everything farther out, but those circles around the cabin stayed sharp. I split extra wood even though the pile was high, needing the swing of the axe to steady my hands. By late afternoon the light was going fast, that short winter daylight bleeding away quick. I brought in enough logs to last 2 days and barred the door early, even though night wouldn't fall for another hour. That night the wind picked up, moaning around the corners like it had something to say. I kept the lantern low and sat in the rocking chair facing the door, shotgun across my lap, though I knew it was foolish. Every creak of the cabin settling made me jump. Around midnight the snow stopped, and the quiet came back heavier than before. I must have dozed off in the chair, because I woke sudden to the sound of the porch boards groaning. Slow, deliberate steps, right outside the door. 1, 2, 3. Then nothing. I sat frozen, listening so hard my ears rang. No knock, no scratching, just that weight shifting the old wood like somebody was standing there thinking. I don't know how long I waited, long enough for the stove to burn down to embers and the cold to start winning again. Finally I crept to the window beside the door, eased the curtain back a finger's width. The porch was empty, snow smooth except for those same prints from morning. But right at the door, fresh ones, bare feet again, pressed deep, toes pointed straight at the threshold, and still no tracks leading away. I dropped the curtain and backed up till my legs hit the chair. Didn't sleep the rest of the night.
Next morning I was out at first light, coffee forgotten. The new prints were there, plain as anything, overlapping the old ones in places. Same size, same strange splay of the toes. They circled again, slower this time, pausing longer at each window. At the back corner of the porch, where the bedroom window looks out toward the ridge, the prints pressed deeper, like the weight had leaned in close. Snow was piled a little against the glass there, as if a breath had fogged it from outside. I checked inside, nothing on my side, no mark, no melt. I spent the day watching, couldn't settle to anything, kept the curtains open so I could see all sides, sat with my back to the stove where I had a view of both windows and the door. The sky stayed gray, wind stayed down, snow stayed perfect. No birds, no squirrels, nothing moving but me. Late in the afternoon I saw something that turned my stomach, a single set of prints coming from the tree line again, fresh, heading straight for the porch. I watched them form almost, though I know that's impossible. 1 minute the yard was smooth, the next there was a trail leading right up the steps. Same bare feet, same pause at the door, then gone. That night I didn't even pretend to sleep, kept the lantern burning, stove stoked high, shotgun loaded. The steps came again around 2 a.m, slow circuit of the porch, boards creaking under weight that wasn't there when I looked. I shouted once, voice cracking, told whatever it was to get gone. Only answer was the wind starting again, rattling the window panes. When the creaking stopped at the door, I swear I heard breathing on the other side, heavy, patient, like somebody listening for me to make the next move. By morning I was shaking. The prints were deeper now, edges starting to crumble from the weight. They had circled 3 full times that I could count, stopping longer at the bedroom window. And there, right in front of the door, the snow was pressed flat in the perfect outline of 2 bare feet, toes almost touching the wood, as if whoever it was had stood there a long, long time. I left 2 days later, waited for a break in the weather, dug the truck out, and drove down the mountain without looking back. Told myself I'd come back in spring, get my things, maybe sell the place. But I never did. Still have the key on my ring though. Some nights when the wind blows cold and the house gets too quiet, I catch myself listening for footsteps on the porch that isn't there, and I wonder if those prints are still waiting, filling in with every new snow, circling closer each time. Because they were my size, and I never saw them leave.
I'd been living in that old family cabin up on the north slope of Roan Mountain for about 3 years when it happened. After Mama passed and the house in Johnson City got sold off to pay her medical debts, I didn't have much choice but to move back into the place my granddaddy built back in the 40s. It's a small, square thing, 2 rooms downstairs, a sleeping loft up top, set a good half-mile off the gravel road that winds along the ridge. The driveway is just a pair of ruts through the laurels, long enough that you can't see the cabin from the road, and you can't see the road from the cabin. I liked that. After 20 years working the night shift at the furniture plant and listening to neighbors argue through thin walls, the quiet felt like a gift. Spring that year came late and mean. We'd had snow into April, then a warm spell that turned everything to mud, and then the rain started. Not the gentle kind that soaks in slow and feeds the creeks, but hard, driving downpours that came sideways off the mountain and turned the whole holler into a drum. I'd sit on the porch in the evenings when the weather allowed, listening to the water roar off the tin roof and watching the mist rise out of the hollows like steam off a kettle. Most nights I was the only soul for miles. The nearest neighbor was Old Man Carver, 3 ridges over, and he didn't drive out in weather like that. It was one of those evenings in early May when I first saw him. I'd just finished supper, pinto beans and cornbread, nothing fancy, and stepped out onto the porch to let the dog do his business. Rain was coming down steady, not a storm exactly, but thick enough that the trees at the edge of the yard were just gray shapes. I was standing there under the overhang, smoking the last of a cigarette, when I noticed something down at the end of the driveway. A darker shape against the dark. A man, standing dead still where the ruts meet the gravel road. No hat, no coat, no umbrella. Just standing there with his face tilted up a little, like he was letting the rain wash over him. At first I thought maybe a car had broken down and he'd walked up looking for help. Happens sometimes, though not often that far off the pavement. I waited a minute, expecting him to start toward the house once he saw the porch light, but he didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't lift a hand, nothing, just stood there getting soaked. I called the dog back in. He'd started growling low in his throat. and went inside to get my slicker and a flashlight. Figured I'd walk down and see what he needed. By the time I got my boots on and stepped off the porch, the rain had picked up harder. I shone the light down the driveway, and there he was, same spot, same stance. Tallish fellow, broad through the shoulders, wearing what looked like an old work shirt and dark pants. Couldn't make out his face. The light just caught the water streaming off him. I hollered, "Hey, you all right down there?" Voice carried pretty good in the wet air, but he didn't answer, didn't even turn his head. I started down the ruts, mud sucking at my boots, thinking maybe he was drunk or hurt. Halfway there, I called again. Still nothing. When I got within 20 yards or so, the light caught him full. He was staring straight up the driveway, straight at the cabin or at me, I couldn't tell which. Face pale, eyes dark hollows, mouth slack. Something about the way he held himself felt wrong, like a scarecrow somebody had dressed up and planted there. I stopped. Dog was back on the porch barking now, sharp and worried. I shouted one more time, "You need help, mister?" Rain swallowed the words. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stood. I don't mind telling you the hair on my neck stood up. I've hunted these mountains since I was a boy, seen bears and cats and things that make most folks turn tail, but this felt different, unnatural. I backed up slow, keeping the light on him, until I reached the porch again. Dog quieted some once I was close, but he stayed pressed against my leg. I watched that figure for another 10 minutes from under the overhang. Rain never let up, he never moved. Finally, I went inside, latched the door, and pulled the curtains tight. Told myself he'd wander off once he got cold enough. People do strange things sometimes, especially if they're grieving or addled. I banged the stove, turned off the lights, and went up to the loft. Couldn't sleep though, kept listening to the rain on the roof and thinking about that shape down there. Around midnight, the dog started growling again, low and steady. I got up, crept to the window that looks down the driveway. Flashlight beam cut through the dark and rain, nothing, just the empty ruts shining wet. He was gone. I figured that was the end of it, probably walked back to wherever he came from, but morning brought a cold drizzle, and when I stepped out to fetch wood, I saw the prints, boot prints, heavy and deep, coming straight up the center of the driveway from the road. They stopped right where I'd seen him standing. Then nothing, no prints leading away in any direction, just those two deep impressions filled to the brim with rainwater, like he'd been rooted there for hours. I stood looking at them a long time. Mud was soft enough that any step away would have shown clear. I walked the edge of the yard, checked the laurels on both sides. Nothing. No broken branches, no disturbed leaves. Just those two boots full of water, sitting there like somebody had poured concrete into them and lifted the man out. Dog sniffed around them nervous-like, then backed off whining. All that day I kept glancing down the driveway, half expecting him to be back. Rain eased to a mist by afternoon, but the clouds stayed low and the light stayed flat. I split wood I didn't need, repaired a loose board on the porch I'd been meaning to fix for months, anything to keep moving. Couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched, though the woods looked empty as ever. Toward evening, the rain started again, harder, washing the yard clean. By dark, those prints were gone, filled in and smoothed over like they'd never been. I thought that would settle it, told myself it was over, but 3 nights later it rained again, same steady downpour, and when I let the dog out before bed I saw him. Same spot, same stance, water pouring off him in sheets. I didn't go down this time, just stood on the porch with a light in my hand and watched until my arm got tired. He never moved. Dog wouldn't even go off the steps, hair raised along his back, growling till I dragged him in. Next morning, same thing. Prints coming up the driveway, stopping exact in the same place. Water standing in them clear and still. I walked down close this time, shone the light into the impressions. Bottoms were smooth, no tread marks I could make out, just the shape of heavy boots. I looked around again, wider this time, nothing. No drag marks, no sign anybody had carried him away, just gone. It kept on like that for near 2 weeks. Every few nights the rain would come hard, and there he'd be, always at the end of the driveway, always facing the cabin, always still as death. I stopped calling out, stopped going down to check, just watched from the porch until he vanished, then went out at dawn to see the prints. They got deeper each time, like he was pressing harder into the ground or staying longer. Water in them always perfectly level, never muddy, like the rain had filled them after he left instead of while he stood. I started sleeping less, kept the shotgun by the bed and a lantern burning low. Dog took to sleeping on the landing halfway up the stairs, where he could see both the door and the loft. Some nights I'd hear him whine in his sleep, paws twitching like he was running from something. I'd lie there listening to the rain and wonder who he was, what he wanted. Thought maybe somebody lost on the mountain, confused, coming back night after night looking for help he couldn't ask for. Thought maybe something worse. One morning toward the end of May, the rain stopped for good. Sun came out weak but steady, and the mist burned off the hollows. I walked down to the spot again. The last set of prints was still there, deeper than ever, water standing clear. I stood looking at them a long time, then did something I hadn't before. I put my own boot down next to one. Same size, near enough, same shape. I stared at that until my stomach trembled.
That night, no rain came. Sky cleared cold and bright, stars sharp as broken glass. I sat on the porch late, smoking and listening to the quiet. Dog lay beside me, finally relaxed. Around 2 a.m, I heard it. Boots on the gravel, slow and deliberate, coming up the road. Not hurrying, just walking steady through the starlight. I froze, hand on the shotgun. Steps got closer, turned into the driveway, started up the ruts toward the cabin. Dog didn't make a sound, just pressed against my leg, trembling. They stopped right at the end of the yard. I couldn't see anything in the dark, but I felt him there, same as always, standing, waiting. I sat till dawn without moving, barely breathing. When the first light came, the driveway was empty. No prints this time. The ground had dried enough overnight. Nothing to show he'd ever been. I left the next day, packed what I could in the truck and drove down to Elizabethton, stayed with my cousin till I found a room in town, never went back for the rest of my things. Some nights when the rain comes hard against the windows here, I still feel that pull, like something standing just out of sight, waiting for the water to rise again, waiting for me to come home. I don't know who he was, don't know what he wanted, but those prints full of water, still as glass, they stay with me clearer than any face I ever saw, and sometimes I wonder if he's still down there at the end of that driveway when the rain comes, standing patient in the dark, waiting for the next pair of boots to match his own.
I inherited the cabin from my daddy's side of the family after he passed in the winter of '09. It sits high on the east face of Black Mountain, just outside of Harlan, Kentucky, where the coal roads quit climbing and the hollers get so narrow the sun only finds them for a few hours a day. The place had been shut up for years, windows boarded, porch sagging, mice living better than people. I was in no shape to stay in town after the funeral, so I loaded what little I had into the back of my truck and drove up the old logging trace until the tires spun and I had to walk the last quarter-mile. First time I opened that door, the air inside was thick with dust and the smell of old wood smoke, but it felt like coming home anyway. I figured the quiet would heal something in me. Turns out, some quiet goes too deep. The cabin's small, just a main room with a stone hearth, a tiny kitchen corner, and a sleeping loft you reach by a ladder steep as a cliff. The walls are rough-hewn logs chinked with clay that's cracked in places, letting in thin whistles of wind on cold nights. There's no electricity up that high, no cell signal, just a propane tank for the cook stove and lanterns for light. One thing that surprised me was the clock, an old wooden wall clock, dark oak with Roman numerals and a faded painting of a mill scene on the face. It hung above the hearth like it had always been there. Daddy never mentioned it, but I remembered seeing it in old photographs from when I was little. The pendulum was still, hands frozen at 3:33. I figured the works had seized up years ago. Didn't bother me. I wound it out of habit the first night, set it to what my watch said, and went to bed thinking it might keep time again. It didn't. Next morning the hands were back at 3:33. I laughed at myself for expecting different, took it down, opened the back, cleaned the dust out best I could with a rag and some oil, wound it again, hung it back up. That night I sat by the fire reading an old Field and Stream until I got sleepy, glanced up at the clock around midnight, hands still moving, ticking steady. Felt good hearing that sound in the empty cabin. I banked the fire, climbed the ladder to the loft, and slept hard. Woke sudden in the dark, heart already racing before I knew why. The room was cold, fire burned down to embers. Then I heard it, the clock ticking, same as before. I looked over the edge of the loft. The faint glow from the coals lit the face just enough to see, hands sitting exact at 3:33, pendulum still. But the ticking kept on, soft and patient, like it was coming from inside the walls instead of the clock itself. I lay there listening until the sound faded and the quiet rushed back in. Told myself it was the house settling, or blood in my ears, or grief playing tricks. Come morning, the clock was ticking again, hands moving normal. I didn't touch it. That became the pattern. Every night the clock would run fine until sometime past midnight, then stop dead at 3:33. The ticking would keep going a few minutes after, faint and directionless, then nothing until dawn when it would start up again like nothing had happened. I got used to it quicker than I should have.
The days were filled with fixing what decades had broken, replacing rotted porch boards, patching the roof where squirrels had chewed through, hauling water from the spring 100 yards down the slope. Work kept my mind off things. Nights by the fire with that steady tick-tock felt almost peaceful, until the stopping came. After a couple weeks, I started waking at the same hour without fail. Didn't need an alarm, just opened my eyes in the black and knew it was 3:33. I'd lie there listening for the leftover ticking that didn't belong to the clock. Some nights it sounded closer, like it was under the floorboards or inside the chimney. Other nights it seemed farther off, drifting in from the woods. I'd get up, light a lantern, check the doors and windows even though I knew they were latched. The cabin felt smaller at that hour, walls pressing in, shadows thicker than they had any right to be. I started leaving a lantern burning low on the table so the dark wouldn't have everything its own way. One night in late October, the wind came up strong, rattling the shutters and driving sleet against the glass. I'd gone to bed early, tired from splitting a dead chestnut I had felled that day. Woke again at the usual time, but something was different. The clock hadn't just stopped, it chimed. One low, mournful note that hung in the air longer than it should. Then nothing. I sat up slow, listening. The sleet hissed outside, wind moaned through the eaves. Several minutes passed in silence. Then it chimed again. 2, 3, all the way to 12. I counted each one, heart thumping heavily. When the 12th faded, I thought that was it. But then came a 13th chime, deeper than the others, like the clock had reached down into the wood of the house itself to find that note. I climbed down the ladder with the lantern shaking in my hand. The clock face glowed faint in the light, hands locked at 3:33, pendulum still. But the sound had come from there, no question. I stood listening until my ears rang, but it didn't chime again, just the wind and the sleet and my own breathing. I went back to bed, but sleep didn't come, lay there till the first gray light leaked through the windows and the clock started ticking normal again. Next day I took it down, opened the back, pulled the batteries even though it had never had any, ran on a spring and pendulum like clocks did 100 years ago, cleaned it again, oiled the works, wound it careful, hung it back up. That night I sat in the rocking chair facing it, lantern turned high, determined to watch the whole thing happen. I lasted until maybe 2:30 before my eyes got heavy, woke with a start, hands at 3:33, pendulum still, and then the chimes started, one after another, slow and deliberate, all the way to 12. I didn't move, didn't breathe loud, just watched the motionless clock ring out the hour that wasn't. When the 12th faded, the 13th came again, longer this time, rolling through the room like distant thunder. I got up, walked over, put my hand on the wood case. It was warm, like body heat. The chime vibrated under my palm even though nothing inside was moving. I pulled the clock off the wall, carried it outside into the cold, set it on the porch rail. Wind whipped sleet into my face, but I left it there. Went back in, latched the door, and sat by the fire till morning. When I stepped out at dawn, the clock was gone. Not broken, not blown off, just gone. No tracks in the mud around the porch, nothing. I searched the yard and down the slope a ways, found nothing but wet leaves and darkness. I thought that would end it. No clock, no chimes. But that night, right on time, I woke to the sound anyway. 13 chimes rolling through the cabin, coming from the empty spot above the hearth where the nail still stuck out, clear and close, like the clock had never left. I sat up in the loft, lantern in my lap, and listened to everyone. When the 13th faded, the leftover ticking started, soft, patient, moving slow around the room, under the floor, then up the walls, then across the ceiling beams right over my head. I didn't sleep again till the sun came. It kept on for weeks. Every night, the invisible clock marked 3:33 with 13 chimes only I could hear. Some nights the ticking would circle the cabin outside, brushing past the windows like something pacing. Other nights it stayed inside, close enough I could feel it in my chest. I stopped trying to explain it, stopped talking to myself about grief or carbon monoxide or going crazy. Just lived around it, the way you live around pain that won't leave. One morning in early December, I woke to silence. No chimes in the night, no ticking after. The quiet felt wrong, heavier than the sounds had ever been. I got up slow, built the fire, made coffee, sat at the table staring at the empty nail above the hearth. Around mid-morning I heard something on the porch, soft scrape like wood on wood. Opened the door careful. There sat the clock, back on the rail where I'd left it weeks before. Face clean, glass unbroken, hand sitting at 3:33. No water damage, no mud, like it had been kept safe somewhere dry. I stood looking at it a long time. Wind was still, sky low and gray. Finally I picked it up, felt that same faint warmth in the case, carried it inside, hung it back on the nail, wound it slow. The pendulum started swinging, ticking steady and normal. That night it ran straight through 3:33 without stopping. No chimes, no extra sounds, just kept perfect time. It's been doing that ever since. Ticks day and night, steady as a heartbeat. I catch myself watching it sometimes, waiting. Some nights I still wake at 3:33 on the dot, even without the stopping to mark it. Lie there listening for chimes that don't come, for ticking that stays where it belongs. The quiet is worse now than the sounds ever were. I don't know what it wanted. Don't know why 13 or why me. Daddy never talked about the clock, and there's nobody left to ask. All I know is some hours belong to the mountains, and they don't like being forgotten. That clock remembers for them. And sometimes when the wind dies and the fire burns low, I swear I feel the house holding its breath, waiting for the hour when the ticking stops again. I don't take it down anymore. Some things are better left hanging.
I got Buster when he was just a pup. A black and tan coonhound mix somebody dropped off at the gas station down in Madison County. He had those long ears and sad eyes that make you feel like he's already seen too much of the world, even at 8 weeks old. I just moved into the old family cabin up on the flank of Big Laurel after my wife, Clara, lost her fight with the cancer. The doctors in Asheville did what they could, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't stay in our little house in town after that. Every corner had her in it. So I packed what mattered into the truck and drove the winding gravel road up to the cabin my granddaddy built in the 30s. Place had been empty for years, but it was mine now, and I figured the quiet would either heal me or finish me off. Buster came along like he knew I needed something to take care of. The cabin sits in a small clearing where the ridge flattens out just enough for a yard. Thick woods press in on every side. Old-growth hemlock and poplar so tall the sun only hits the roof for a few hours around noon. There's a spring 100 yards down the slope that never quits, even in drought, and a porch that runs the full front, wide enough for 2 rocking chairs, though I only ever used one. First few weeks were rough. Nights were the worst. Lying in the loft, listening to the wind move through the trees, feeling the empty space beside me where Clara should have been. Buster helped. He'd curl up at the foot of the bed, warm and breathing steady, and I'd sleep a little better knowing he was there. He was a good dog from the start, bold during the day, chasing squirrels up the hollow, splashing in the creek, always coming when I whistled. He'd sit with me on the porch while I whittled or just stared at nothing, head in my lap like he understood grief better than most people. But as summer turned to fall, something shifted. It started slow. One evening in late September, I called him in after dark, same as always. He was out in the yard sniffing around the woodpile, and when I opened the door and clapped my hands, he stopped dead, ears perked, staring at the open doorway. Then he backed up a step, tail tucked, and let out a low whine. I laughed at first, thought maybe a mouse had run across the floor and spooked him, coaxed him with a piece of jerky. He took it gentle, but still wouldn't cross the threshold. Ended up sleeping on the porch that night, curled against the wall right outside the door. Next night, same thing. I'd call, he'd come to the steps, but stop there, hackles half raised, staring into the cabin like something inside wasn't right. After a few days of this, I started worrying he'd picked up mange or rabies or something, but he ate fine, eyes clear, no foam at the mouth, just refused to come in after the sun went down. During the day, he was normal, followed me everywhere, slept inside while I napped in the chair, but come dusk, he'd plant himself on the porch and watch the door like it led somewhere he didn't want to go. I tried everything. New bedding, treats scattered across the floor, even leaving the door open so he could wander in on his own. Nothing worked. He'd pace the porch planks, whining low, then settle facing the door with his ears forward. Some nights he'd bark, sharp, urgent bursts at nothing I could see. I'd grab the lantern, step out with the .22, shine it into the yard and woods. Never anything there. No glowing eyes, no tracks come morning. Just the dark and the trees and the wind moving through them like a sigh. By October, the nights were getting cold enough that frost silvered the grass some mornings. I felt bad leaving him out, so I dragged an old army blanket on the porch and made him a bed under the overhang. He took to it quick, curling tight, but his eyes stayed open longer than they should, watching the door or the tree line, I couldn't tell which. One night the temperature dropped hard and the thin sleet started hissing through the branches. I opened the door and called him soft, voice cracking a little. "Come on, boy, it's too cold out there." He lifted his head, looked at me with those sad eyes, then looked past me into the cabin, let out a single bark, sharp, almost warning, then laid his head back down.
I stood there a long time, sleep melting on my shoulders, feeling like the dog knew something I didn't. The barking got worse as the weeks wore on, not constant, but sudden fits that would start around midnight and go till nearly dawn, always aimed into the dark off the porch, sometimes toward the woods, sometimes straight at the cabin door. I'd sit up in the chair with the lantern low, listening to him carry on, heart thumping for no reason I could name. A couple times I stepped out and hushed him, but he just looked at me apologetic, whined once, then start again quieter, like he couldn't help it, like something was out there worth warning about. I started hearing things too, little sounds inside the cabin at night, soft scrapes along the baseboards, a creak on the ladder to the loft that didn't match the house settling. Told myself it was mice or the wind finding new cracks, but Buster heard them too. His ears would twitch toward the inside wall, and he'd growl low, body pressed flat to the porch boards. One night I woke to dead silence, no barking, no wind, just the kind of quiet that feels heavy. Looked out the window and saw him standing at the edge of the porch, staring into the trees, every muscle tense, tail rigid. I cracked the door. "What is it, boy?" He didn't turn, just took one step down into the yard, then another. I called him sharp, but he kept going, slow, deliberate, straight into the dark between the hemlocks. I grabbed the lantern and the rifle and went after him, called his name till my throat hurt. The light only cut 20 feet ahead and the woods swallowed sound quick. I followed the faint rustle of leaves for maybe half an hour, going deeper than I meant to. The ground sloped steep and I kept thinking I heard him just ahead. Then nothing. No rustle, no whine, no bark. Just me and the lantern and the trees closing ranks. I turned back eventual, half lost, and stumbled into the clearing near dawn. Buster was already on the porch, curled in his blanket, shaking hard. Coat wet with dew, eyes wide and glassy. I knelt beside him, ran my hands over him. No blood, no burrs, no sign of a fight. He licked my hand once, weak, then laid his head back down like he was too tired to hold it up. After that night, he wouldn't leave the porch at all once the sun started down. Not to eat, not to drink, not even to do his business. He'd hold it till morning, then bolt out quick and come right back. I'd carry his bowls out to him, sit with him while he ate slow. He lost weight. Ribs started showing under that glossy coat, but his eyes stayed sharp, always watching the woods or the door, depending on the hour. The last night came in early November, hard freeze, stars bright enough to cast shadows. I'd gone to bed early, worn out for worry. Woke sometimes past midnight to silence again. No barking. Climbed down the ladder quiet, lantern in hand. Looked out the window. Buster wasn't on the porch. Blanket empty, bowls untouched. Door was still latched from inside. I stepped out soft. Nothing answered but the wind starting to rise. I searched till the lantern burned low, down to the spring, along the old logging trace, even partway up the ridge. Found his tracks leaving the porch, heading into the tree, same as before. Followed them till they faded on frozen ground. Called till my voice gave out. Came back at dawn, half froze, hands numb. He was there waiting, curled tight in the blanket, shaking worse than before. Eyes different somehow, older, like he'd seen the bottom of something deep and dark. He let me pick him up, carried him inside for the first time in months. Laid him by the stove and wrapped him in quilts. He slept 2 days straight, only waking to lap a little water. After that, he came inside, willing. Slept at the foot of my bed again, warm and close. But he was never the same dog. Didn't chase squirrels anymore, didn't bark at strangers on the rare time somebody came up the road. Just stayed near me, quiet, watching the windows at night like he expected something to look back. Some evenings he'd stand at the door, staring out, whining soft, but he wouldn't cross the threshold after dark, not once. He passed last spring, old before his time. I buried him under the big hemlock by the spring, put a flat stone on top. Still sit out there sometimes when the grief gets heavy. Nights are quieter now without his warning barks, but the quiet feels watchful. I catch myself listening for sounds he used to hear, scrapes inside the walls, footsteps on the porch that aren't mine. I never knew what he saw out there in the woods those 2 nights he ran, never knew what made him refuse to come inside, or why he guarded that door like his life depended on it. He couldn't tell me, and I couldn't ask, but some nights when the wind moves through the trees just right, I swear I hear a faint whine on the porch, like a dog that still won't come in, and I wonder if whatever he found is still walking those ridges, waiting for the next one lonely enough to listen. I keep the door latched tight after dark now, and I don't call into the woods anymore.
I moved up to the north side of Clinch Mountain after my boy, Tyler, went missing on a hiking trip in the Jefferson National Forest. Search parties looked for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers from 3 counties, but they never found so much as a boot print. Folks said he must have fallen in one of the old mine shafts that honeycombed the ridges, or maybe got turned around in the laurel thickets and walked clean out of the world. I couldn't stay in our house in Abington anymore. Every room echoed with him calling me from the kitchen or laughing at some fool thing on TV. So I sold what I could, packed the rest in the bed of my truck, and took the old fire road up to the family land where my daddy's hunting cabin still stood. It wasn't much, just a single-room log box with a lean-to porch and a stone chimney, but it was far enough from people that the quiet might let me breathe. The nearest neighbor was Harlan Ward's place, a half-mile down the ridge through a stand of old oaks and hemlock. Harlan had passed 5 years earlier from the black lung, and his kids lived down in Bristol now, too busy with their own lives to bother with the cabin. It sat empty, windows dark, porch roof sagging under years of wet snow and leaf rot. Vines had started climbing the logs, and the door hung crooked on its hinges. I'd wave at it sometimes when I walked the ridgeline gathering firewood, but mostly I kept to my side of the holler. The two cabins couldn't see each other through the trees, but on still nights, sound carried easy. Owls, coyotes, the creek down in the gap. It started in early November, the first real cold snap. I'd been sitting on my porch after supper, coffee gone cold in the tin mug, watching the last light weed out of the sky. The ridges turn purple, then black, layer after layer, until you feel like you're the only thing left alive. That's when I saw it, a soft, warm glow in the direction of Harlan's place. Not bright like a lantern or harsh like a bulb, but steady and golden, the kind of light that comes from a fire laid just right, or an old kerosene lamp turned low. It flickered once, gentle, behind what I knew was the front window. I stared a long time, thinking maybe one of Harlan's boys had come up to check on things, but no truck tracks on the road, no smoke from the chimney. Just that light, holding steady in a cabin that hadn't had power since the rural electric co-op ran lines past it back in the 70s. I didn't sleep much that night, kept picturing that glow, wondering if I had imagined it. Come morning, I walked the ridge with my 30-30 slung over my shoulder, telling myself I was just looking for sign of deer. The light was gone, of course. Harlan's cabin looked as abandoned as ever, door ajar, leaves drifted across the threshold, windows filmed with dust and cobwebs. I stood in the yard a minute, listening to the wind move through the oaks, then went home. 3 nights later it came again. I was inside splitting kindling by lantern light when I happened to glance out the window. There it was, same soft glow, same window. Lasted maybe 20 minutes, then faded slow like someone had turned down a wick. I pulled on my coat and boots, grabbed the flashlight, and started down the ridge. The trail between the cabins is faint, overgrown with briars, but I knew it by heart from hunting with Daddy when I was a boy. Frost crunched under my boots, and my breath hung white in the beam. When I got close, I cut the light, let my eyes adjust. The glow was still there, warm and inviting against the black trees. I could almost feel the heat of it from the yard. I called out soft, "Hello? Anybody home?" No answer, just the creak branches overhead. I stepped onto the porch slow, boards groaning like they hadn't felt weight in years, pushed the door open with the rifle barrel. Inside was cold as a grave, air thick with dust and the smell of rot. My flashlight cut across the room, table overturned, mouse droppings on the hearth, everything just as empty and dead as it should be. No lamp, no candle, no sign anyone had been there since Harlan's funeral. I walked the whole place, single room, sleeping loft, even the lean-to shed out back. Nothing. Turned to leave, feeling foolish, and that's when I heard it, a faint click, like a latch settling. I spun the light around, empty, stepped back onto the porch, pulled the door shut behind me. I was halfway across the yard when I looked back. The light was on again, stronger this time, spilling gold across the porch boards like someone had just kindled a fresh fire inside. I stood frozen, heart thumping hard enough I could hear it in my ears. The glow held steady for maybe 10 seconds, then dimmed slow until the window went dark. I didn't wait to see if it came back,
walked fast up the ridge, didn't look behind me till I reached my own porch. After that, I watched for it. Some nights nothing, others every few days. That same warm light would appear, always after full dark, always in the front window, always lasting just long enough to notice. I told myself it was reflection, moonlight catching an old bottle or a piece of glass. But the nights it happened were cloudy more often than not, and the light was too steady, too warm. I started leaving my curtains open so I could see down the ridge from my table. Some evenings I'd sit with the lantern turned low, coffee in hand, waiting. When it came, I'd feel a pull, like the light was meant for me, like it was waiting for me to come closer. By December, the snow started. First just flurries, then a heavy wet thaw that buried the trail and turned the woods silent. I was running low on supplies, but the road down the mountain was drifted shut, so I made do with what I had. Nights got longer, colder. The light came more often, 3 times in 1 week. Always the same, appear soft, glow steady, fade slow. I stopped going down to check. Didn't want to walk that ridge in the dark anymore. Didn't want to stand in that cold, empty room and feel whatever was making that light watching me leave. One night in late January, the temperature dropped hard, wind howling down off the ridge like a living thing. I'd banged the fire good and gone to bed early, quilts pulled to my chin. Woke sometime past midnight to dead quiet. No wind, no creaking branches, just the kind of stillness that presses on your chest. I lay there listening, then got up and went to the window. Harlan's cabin was glowing bright, brighter than I'd ever seen, light spilling out the door which stood open now, painting the snow gold clear to the tree line. Looked like a hearth fire laid high and welcoming, the kind you'd see from the road and thank God for on a bitter night. I stood watching a long time. Part of me wanted to pull on my boots and go down, warm my hands at that fire, sit a spell like Harlan was still alive and pouring coffee. The light felt like company, like something waiting patient all these years. I even took my coat off the hook. But then I thought of Tyler, how he had gone into the woods one clear fall day and never came back out, how easy it is to follow a light that isn't yours. I closed the curtains tight, latched the door though it was already barred, and sat up the rest of the night with the rifle across my knees. Come morning, the snow had stopped. I waited till full light, then walked the ridge slow. Harlan's door was shut again, drifted halfway with snow. No tracks leading in or out, just smooth white all the way to the trees. I didn't go inside, didn't need to. I know what I'd find, cold, dark, empty. The light still comes sometimes, not as often now, maybe once a month when the nights are longest. I don't watch for it anymore, but I know when it's there, feel it in the room like a warmth against the glass. Some evenings I'll be sitting by my own fire, and the thought will creep in, maybe tonight it'll stay on longer, maybe tonight the door will stay open, maybe if I walk down quick enough I'll catch whoever or whatever is keeping that fire. But I don't go. I stay here with my curtains drawn and the latch barred, listening to the wind worry the eaves, because some lights aren't meant to guide you home. Some lights are just waiting for you to step outside your own, so they can close the door behind you. And on the worst nights, when the snow piles deep and the woods go still, I swear I hear footsteps on Harlan's porch, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing in front of that window, waiting for company that never comes, or maybe waiting for the one that finally will. I keep my fire burning high now, keep my own light bright, because I know what empty feels like, and I'm not ready to join it yet. Not yet.
I found my name carved into the old beech tree the morning after the first hard frost of that autumn. The kind of cold that snaps the last of the leaves from the branches and leaves the ground brittle underfoot. It was October 2022, and I'd been living alone in the cabin on my family's old property for just over a year, ever since the paperwork finished and the keys were mine. The place had belonged to my grandfather, then sat empty for nearly a decade after he passed. I'd come back to fix it up, to make it livable again, to prove to myself I could stand the quiet without the noise of the city or the company of anyone else. The cabin was small, single room with a sleeping loft, stone fireplace, porch facing the ridge. Behind it stretched 20 acres of mixed hardwood and pine, the kind of land that feels like it's been watching you longer than you've been alive. The beech stood near the edge of the clearing, maybe 30 yards from the back door, one of the few trees my grandfather had left standing when he cleared the land in the 50s. Its bark was smooth, silver gray, the kind that takes carvings clean and holds them for decades. I'd passed it every day since I moved in, never paid it much mind. That morning I was splitting kindling for the stove, axe in hand, breath fogging white, when I glanced over and saw it. My name. Carter. Deep into the trunk, letters cut straight and sure, no hesitation in the strokes. The cuts were fresh, white wood exposed, sap still beating at the edges. I walked closer, axe forgotten in my hand. The letters were not in my handwriting. They were blocky, deliberate, the kind of carving done with a heavy knife and no hurry. I touched them. The wood was still soft, damp from the night's frost. I looked around the clearing. No footprints in the thin layer of leaves. No broken branches. Nothing disturbed. Just my name staring back at me from the tree. I stood there a long time, axe hanging loose, feeling the cold creep under my collar. I told myself it was kids, some local teenagers who'd wandered up from the hollow, thought it was funny, or a hunter marking territory. I told myself a lot of things. Then I took the knife from my belt, the same one I used to clean fish, and carved over the letters, scratched them out, covered them with my own cuts, messy, angry. Carter disappeared under crosshatches and gouges. I stepped back, satisfied. The tree looked wounded, but it was mine again. The next morning it was back. Deeper this time. The fresh wood I'd cut away had been carved through again, the same block letters, same sure hand. Carter. The cuts were clean, precise, like someone had spent the night working with a sharp blade and steady patience. Sap had oozed into the grooves overnight, dark and sticky. I stood there in the gray dawn, breath clouding, axe in hand again. I carved over it once more, harder this time, deeper, splintering the bark, trying to erase the name completely. I worked until my shoulders ached, until the letters were buried under raw white wood and flying chips. I stepped back. The tree looked raw, bleeding sap. I went inside, made coffee, tried to forget. The next morning it was deeper still. The same letters, carved through every layer I'd added, through the splinters, through the sap. Carter. The cuts were cleaner now, almost polished, like whoever held the knife had taken their time, had enjoyed the work. I stared at my name in the tree, at the way the bark curled back around the edges like it was trying to heal around the wound. I didn't carve this time. I just stood there, axe hanging at my side, feeling the cold settle deeper into my bones. I started checking the tree every morning. Every day the name was there, deeper, sharper, the letters growing bolder, the cuts cleaner. I stopped trying to erase them. I started watching the woods instead. I'd sit on the porch at dusk, shotgun across my lap, waiting for movement, for a shape to step out from the trees. Nothing ever did. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign of anyone. Just the tree, standing patient in the clearing, my name carved deeper each day. I began to avoid the back of the property. I kept the curtains drawn on that side of the cabin. I stopped splitting wood near the beach. But the feeling followed me. Every time I stepped outside, every time I crossed the yard to the shed or the woodpile, I felt it, the weight of my own name staring at me from the tree. I started hearing things at night, soft scraping, like a blade on wood, faint and rhythmic, coming from the direction of the clearing. I'd lie awake, listening, waiting for it to stop. It always did, eventually. One night in early December, I couldn't take it anymore. I woke to the sound of scraping, slow, deliberate, closer than before. I got up, pulled on boots, grabbed the shotgun, and stepped outside. The moon was high, the clearing silver with frost. I walked straight to the beach. My name was gone. The trunk was smooth again, bark intact, no cuts, no scars. I ran my hand over the place where the letters had been. The wood was unmarked, perfect. I stood there, breath fogging, shotgun loose in my hands. Relief washed through me, sharp and sudden. I laughed, short, shaky, told myself I'd imagined it all, that the cold had gotten to me, that solitude had filled the empty spaces with things that weren't there. I turned to go back inside, and there, on the porch, carved into the doorframe, was my name, Carter. Fresh cuts, white wood exposed, sap still beating. The letters were deeper than they'd ever been on the tree, clean, precise, like someone had taken their time while I slept. I didn't go back inside that night. I sat on the porch steps with the shotgun across my lap, watching the tree, waiting for it to move, for the bark to split and show the name again. Nothing happened. The woods were quiet. The frost glared. Dawn came slow, gray and cold. I left the cabin that morning, packed what I could carry, locked the door, drove down the mountain without looking back. I sold the place 6 months later, didn't go inside to show it. The realtor handled everything.
The new owners thought it was charming. They liked the quiet. They liked the view. I live in town now, small apartment, no porch, no trees close enough to carve. I keep the windows closed at night. I keep the lights on. But every time I pass a tree with smooth bark, every time I see my name written somewhere, on a form, on a receipt, on a label, I feel it. The slow, patient pressure of something watching, waiting for me to look away long enough to carve again. I don't go back to the cabin. I don't walk those woods. But I know the name is still there, deeper each time I think about it, carved into something that doesn't forget. And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the house is still, I hear it, the soft scraping of a blade on wood, faint and rhythmic, coming from somewhere just outside. I don't get up. I don't look. I just lie there, listening, waiting for it to stop. It always does, eventually. But I know it's patient. The tree is patient. The cabin is patient. And every quiet night, when I'm alone, I feel the blade moving again, slow, deliberate, carving my name deeper. I haven't gone back, but I know the name is waiting, always waiting, for the day I finally return, stand in front of that tree, and see my own name staring back, deeper, cleaner, more certain than ever. I haven't returned, but the pull is there, quiet, patient, always pulling, and I wonder how long I can keep walking away before I finally step back inside, stand in that clearing, and let the tree finish what it started. I haven't yet, but the knife is patient, the bark is patient, and my name is still waiting to be carved again, deeper, always deeper.
I remember the evening I first noticed the shadow on the porch, like it happened yesterday, though it was early October, 3 years ago now. The kind of dusk when the light turns gold and heavy, and everything feels suspended, waiting for night to claim it. I'd driven up to Grandfather Mountain alone that weekend, needing the high country after months of too many hospital shifts and not enough sleep. The cabin was small, rough-hewn logs, perched on a shoulder of the ridge with a long porch facing west, nothing between me and the drop into the Linville Gorge but air and pine. I liked that porch. It was the only place I could sit without feeling the walls pass in. I carried my coffee out just as the sun touched the horizon, the sky bleeding orange across the valley. I settled into the old rocker, boots propped on the rail, letting the quiet settle over me. The air was cool, sharp with the scent of balsam and dry leaves. My shadow stretched long across the porch boards, black and thin, head tilted back the way mine was, arms resting on the chair arms. I watched it for a while, the way you do when you're alone and have nowhere to be. The sun sank lower. The shadow grew longer still, reaching the steps, spilling down into the yard. When the light finally failed, I stood up, stretched, and walked inside to turn on the lamp. The door closed behind me with its familiar creak. I crossed the room, flicked the switch. Warm yellow light filled the space. I glanced back toward the window. My shadow was still on the porch. It hadn't moved with me. The shape stood exactly where I'd left it, upright, shoulders squared, head turned slightly toward the door, arms at its sides. The porch boards were empty of me, but the shadow remained, dark against the fading light, perfectly still. I stared. My heart gave one heart thud, then settled into something faster. I told myself it was a trick of twilight, some optical echo from the low sun, the way light can linger on surfaces after the source is gone. I stepped closer to the window. The shadow stayed. I raised my hand. In the glass, I saw my arm lift. On the porch, the shadow's arm stayed down. I closed the blinds. Hard. The slats rattled shut. I stood there in the lamplight, breathing too loud, waiting for my pulse to slow. When I peeked through a crack a minute later, the shadow was still there, unchanged, unmoved, staring at the closed blinds like it could see through them. I let the slats snap back, sat on the sofa, tried to read. The words blurred. Every few minutes I glanced at the window. The blinds stayed shut. The shadow stayed outside. I didn't sleep much. I kept the lamp on low, listened to the house settle, the soft creak of logs cooling, the wind brushing the eaves. Around 3, the wind died completely. The silence thickened. I got up, walked to the window again, parted the blinds just enough. The shadow was still there, taller now, sharper in the moonlight. It hadn't moved an inch, just stood,
watching the door. I closed the blinds tighter, backed away, sat in the chair with the shotgun across my lap. I didn't load it, didn't need to. It was more for the weight than anything else. I sat like that until dawn, listening for footsteps on the porch boards. None came. Morning light washed the porch clean. The shadow was gone. The boards were bare, frost glittering on the wood. No mark, no sign anything had stood there all night. I stepped outside, walked the length of the porch, looked down at the yard. Nothing. Just grass, dead leaves, the faint line where my own shadow had stretched the evening before. I told myself the night had been a trick of light and exhaustion. I spent the day hiking the ridge trails, letting the wind and the elevation scrub the unease from my head. By evening, I almost believed it. I left the cabin the next morning, drove down the mountain with the windows open, radio loud. I didn't look back at the porch when I locked the door. I told myself I wouldn't need to. But the feeling followed me home. At first, it was small things. I'd catch my shadow on the apartment wall and pause, waiting for it to lag, to hesitate. It never did. I'd sit on my own small porch in the evenings, watching my shadow stretch across the concrete, and feel the absence of that other one beside it. I started keeping the blinds closed after sunset. I stopped sitting with my back to windows. I told myself it was nothing. Grief, isolation, the way the mind fills empty spaces with shapes that look like fear. Then came the nights I woke feeling the weight on my shoulder. Not a hand, not a touch, just the sensation of something standing behind me, close enough that the air shifted, close enough that I could almost feel the outline of a body matching mine. I'd lie still, eyes open in the dark, waiting for it to move. It never did. It just stood, patient, watching the back of my head like it was waiting for me to turn around and acknowledge it. I haven't been back to the cabin. I sold it last year, sight unseen, to a couple from Charlottesville for a weekend place. I didn't warn them about the porch, didn't mention the shadow that stayed when I left. I told myself it was tied to that place, that ridge, that particular dusk. But sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment and the light is low, I catch my shadow on the wall and pause. I wait for it to hesitate, to stay behind when I move, to stand there, watching the door, waiting for me to come back outside. It hasn't happened yet, but I feel it waiting. Just out of sight. Always just out of sight. Waiting. And I wonder how long I can keep moving forward before it decides to stay, before I turn around one evening and see my own shadow still standing where I left it, watching the door, waiting for me to step back into the light and join it. I haven't turned yet, but the shadow is patient. And the evenings are getting longer. I still sit on my own porch sometimes. I still watch my shadow stretch across the concrete. I still feel the absence beside it. And I know deep down that one day the absence will fill. Not with light, but with something that remembers how to stand still when everything else moves on. I haven't seen it yet, but I feel it lingering. Just out of sight. Always just out of sight. Waiting.
I remember the last night I spent in the old homestead, like the walls still hold my breath, waiting for me to come back and exhale. It was the end of September 2024, the weekend before the closing. The realtor had already taped the sold sign to the gate, but the papers weren't final until Monday. I drove up alone, the same winding road my father used to take every Sunday, past the same rusted gates and the same hollowed-out barn that used to smell of hay and motor oil. The leaves were just beginning to turn, reds and golds bleeding into the green, the kind of beauty that makes you forget how fast winter can kill it all. The house was waiting. Same gray clapboard, same sagging porch, same tin roof patched with mismatched sheets my grandfather put up in the 70s. I parked in the drive, killed the engine, and sat there a long minute, listening to the ticks of cooling metal. The place looked smaller than I remembered, smaller than it had been when I was a boy, running barefoot across the yard, smaller than when I came home for holidays with my parents still alive, smaller than when I
brought my sister here after Dad's funeral, and we sat on the porch until dawn without saying much. I carried my bag inside. The door still creaked the same way. The hinges still needed oil. The air smelled of old pine, dust, and the faint sweet of dried apples left too long in the cellar. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew every board, every shadow. I spent the afternoon sorting what was left. Boxes of photographs, yellowed letters, my grandfather's old pocket watch that hadn't ticked in decades. I moved slow, like if I hurried, the house would resent it. By evening, the sun was gone, the ridge behind the house swallowing the last of the light. I built a small fire in the stone hearth, the same hearth where my great-grandmother used to cook when the power lines were down, the same one my father used to stoke when I was small and afraid of the dark. I sat in his chair, the one with the worn armrests, and watched the flames climb. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel deliberate. Around midnight, the footsteps started. Soft at first, like someone walking slow across the upstairs hall. Thump, pause, thump. The same rhythm my father used to take when I was a child, door to door, floorboards groaning under his weight. I froze, listening. The sound moved toward the stairs, then down, each step careful, measured. I didn't call out. I just sat, firelight flickering across my face, waiting. The footsteps reached the bottom, stopped at the doorway to the living room. Silence. Then the soft click of the latch on the back door, the one that leads to the porch. Click. Pause. Click. The door that had always stuck, the one my grandfather used to curse every winter. I heard it open, heard the hinges groan, heard the cold air rush in, carrying the smell of frost and pine. I stood up, walked to the doorway. The hall was empty. The back door was closed, latched. I checked the lock. Still secure. I went back to the chair, sat down, waited. The house breathed. The soft tick of cooling logs, the faint drip from the roof, the wind brushing the eaves. Then the whispers began, low, overlapping, coming from the kitchen, from the upstairs hall, from the porch. My name, murmured soft, like someone calling from another room. Not angry, not urgent, just there. The same way my mother used to call me when I was small and hiding under the table. The same way my father used to murmur my name when he thought I was asleep. I sat still, listening. The voices moved, now closer, now farther, always just out of reach. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just waited until the fire died to embers and the room grew cold. At dawn, the house felt empty for the first time. Not quiet. Empty. The footsteps were gone. The whispers were gone. The air felt thinner, lighter, like something had finally left. I packed what I could carry. Photographs, the pocket watch, a few books my mother had loved. I walked the rooms one last time, touching the walls, the door frames, the places where hands had worn the paint smooth. I locked the door behind me. I didn't look back when I drove away. The ridge swallowed the house in the rear view. I told myself it was over, that the sounds had been grief, memory, the way old houses hold on to the people who lived in them. I was wrong. I still dream I'm there. Every few weeks, usually when the nights turn cold and the wind moves through the pines outside my apartment window, I wake up in the cabin again. I hear the footsteps first, slow, familiar, crossing the upstairs hall, then the latch on the back door, then the whispers, soft, overlapping, calling my name the way my mother used to, the way my father used to, the way my grandfather used to when he thought I was asleep. I sit up in the dream, quilt pulled to my chin, listening. The fire is low, the house is dark. I walk to the living room, stand in the doorway, wait for the sounds to come closer. They always do. They stop just outside the room. The whispers fade to breathing, slow, steady, patient. I step forward. The floorboards creak under my weight. I reach the doorway. The porch is empty. The yard is empty. The woods are black. But the house feels full again, full of footsteps that haven't left, full of whispers that haven't stopped, full of people who never quite went away. I wake up sweating, heart pounding, the apartment dark and quiet around me. I turn on the lamp. I sit on the edge of the bed, listening. Nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock. But I know they're still there, in the cabin, in the walls, in the spaces between the boards, waiting for me to come back, waiting for the night I finally drive up that road again, unlock the door, step inside, and sit in the chair by the fire. I haven't gone back. I sold the place. I paid the taxes. I let it go. But the dreams keep coming. The footsteps keep pacing. The whispers keep calling my name. Soft, patient, waiting. I don't know if they're angry. I don't know if they're sad. I just know they're still there. In the house. In the dark. In the spaces I left behind. And sometimes when the wind comes down the ridge and the night is still, I hear them again. Not loud, not close. Just there, waiting for me to come home. I haven't yet. But the house is patient, the sounds are patient, and every quiet night, when the world is asleep and the dark is deep, I feel the pull, soft, insistent, asking me to drive back up that road, to unlock the door, to step inside, to sit by the fire and listen, to finally answer when they call my name. I haven't answered, but I hear them, every night, waiting. And I know one day the pull will be too strong. One day I'll turn onto that gravel road. One day I'll step onto that porch. One day I'll open the door and let the sounds in. And when I do, I wonder if they'll finally stop, or if they'll just keep going, forever, patient, always patient, waiting for me to come home.